I wake up to the soft hum of my alarm clock, the same routine I've followed for years now. It's 6:30 a.m., and the Seattle sky outside our bedroom window is still dark, a grayish haze settling over the city like it's too tired to get up yet. I roll out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Sabrina. She's curled up under the blankets, her dark hair spilling across the pillow. 10 years of marriage, and I still catch myself staring at her sometimes, wondering how we got here. My name's Caleb Royce, 36 years old, a senior systems analyst at a tech firm downtown. It's a good job, steady, pays the bills, keeps the lights on in this modest two-bedroom house we bought 6 years ago. People say I'm dependable, the kind of guy you can count on. Soft-spoken, maybe a little too reserved, but I've always liked things calm, predictable. That's me in a nutshell, I guess. I shuffle into the kitchen, flick on the coffee maker, and lean against the counter as it gurgles to life. The house is quiet, just the way I like it before the day starts pulling me in a dozen directions. Sabrina's still asleep, and for a moment, I let myself enjoy the stillness. Work's been good lately. My boss keeps hinting at a promotion, something about leading a new project. I don't talk about it much, though. Sabrina doesn't ask, and I don't push. That's how we've always been. She's the spark, the one who fills a room with her laugh, her plans, her energy. I'm the anchor, keeping things steady while she shines. It works, mostly. But there's this weight I've been carrying, one I don't talk about out loud. It's not just me and Sabrina anymore, not really. It's her family, too. Her sisters, Mira and Talia, they've got this way of pulling me into their lives without ever asking if I want to be there. It started small, back when we were newlyweds. A favor here, a quick errand there. Mira needed someone to watch her oldest when she had a doctor's appointment. Talia asked if I could fix her car's flat tire one rainy afternoon. I said yes because that's what you do, right? You help family. Sabrina would smile and say, "You're so good to us, Caleb," and I'd feel like I was doing something right. But over the years, those little favors turned into expectations. Now, it's like I'm on call for them, the guy who just handles things. I sip my coffee, staring at the fridge covered in photos, Sabrina and me at our wedding, Myra's kids grinning with ice cream smeared on their faces, Talia's twins clinging to my legs at some park outing. I don't even remember agreeing to half of it. Last weekend, Mira dropped off her 3 kids, Lily, Max, and little Owen, without so much as a text beforehand. "You're a lifesaver, Caleb," she said, already halfway out the door. Sabrina just laughed it off when I brought it up later. "They're family," she said, like that explained everything. I wanted to say something, to tell her I'm tired of being the go-to guy, but the words stuck in my throat. I don't like fights. Never have. So I nodded, kept the peace, and spent my Saturday building a Lego castle with Max while Owen cried for his mom. Work's my escape, in a way. I head out the door by 7:15, the crisp March air hitting my face as I lock up. The drive downtown is quiet, just me and the radio turned low. At the office, I'm good at what I do, solving problems, writing code, keeping systems running smoothly. My desk is neat, my project's on track. People respect me here. It's different from home, where I feel like I'm always playing catch-up with what everyone else needs. Sabrina texts me around noon, asking if I can grab groceries on my way back. Mira might come by later, she adds. I stare at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. Might come by. That means she will, and she'll probably bring the kids again. I type back a quick, sure, and set the phone down, rubbing my temples. By the time I get home, it's dark outside, and Myra's already there. Her van's parked crooked in the driveway, and I can hear Owen wailing before I even open the door. Sabrina's in the kitchen, laughing with Mira over a glass of wine while the kids run wild in the living room. "Hey, babe," Sabrina calls out, barely looking up. "Can you keep an eye on them? We're just catching up." I set the grocery bags on the counter, my jaw tight. Lily's chasing Max with a marker, and Owen's tugging at my pant leg, snot running down his face. "Hey, buddy," I say, scooping him up. Mira glances over with a smile. "You're so good with them, Caleb. Thanks for this." I nod, but inside, I'm screaming. Good with them. Thanks for this. It's not a compliment, it's a leash. I spend the next hour wrangling the kids, getting them settled with a movie while Sabrina and Mira talk about some drama with Talia's husband. I'm half listening, wiping Owen's nose, when Mira says, "You're like the brother we never had, Caleb." Sabrina laughs, and I force a smile. Brother. Uncle. Babysitter. I don't even know what I am to them anymore. Later, when Myra's gone and the house is quiet again, Sabrina kisses my cheek and says, "You're the best, You know that? I want to believe her. I want to feel like this life we've built is enough. But as I lie in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I can't shake the feeling that I'm slipping away, piece by piece, into a role I never signed up for. And I don't know how to stop it. Not yet. I'm sitting in my office chair, the hum of the tech firm buzzing around me, but my mind's drifting back to how it all began. It's a quiet Tuesday in March, and I've got a stack of reports to finish, but instead, I'm staring out the window at the Seattle skyline, gray and damp like always. My name's Caleb Royce, and I've been married to Sabrina for a decade now. 10 years, it sounds like a milestone, something to celebrate. And it was, at first. I remember our wedding day, her in that white dress, smiling at me like I was the only guy in the world. Back then, it was just us, two people figuring out life together. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being just us. It became me, Sabrina, and her whole family, Mira, Talia, and all their baggage. I didn't see it coming, not at the start. It crept up slow, like a tide I didn't notice until I was knee-deep. It started innocent enough. Sabrina and I had been married maybe 6 months when Mira called one Saturday morning. She sounded flustered, said her ex, Brandon, had bailed on watching their oldest, Lily, and she had a job interview she couldn't miss. "Can you take her for a couple hours, Caleb?" she asked, her voice all sweet and desperate. I looked over at Sabrina, who was still in her pajamas, sipping coffee on the couch. She shrugged and said, "Why not? It's just Lily." So I said yes. Lily showed up with a little backpack and a shy smile, and I spent the day playing board games with her while Sabrina ran errands. Mira picked her up later, gushing, "You're a lifesaver, Caleb. Seriously, thank you." I felt good about it, like I'd done something noble. Sabrina kissed me that night and said, "You're so sweet to help out." I liked that, being the guy who could step up. But that one yes turned into a habit I couldn't break. A couple months later, Talia called. She and her husband, Jared, had twins, barely a year old, and they were swamped. "Can you grab some groceries for us?" she asked. Jared's working late, and I'm stuck with the babies. I didn't even think about saying no. I drove to the store, picked up milk, diapers, bread, whatever was on her list, and dropped it off at their cramped apartment across town. Talia hugged me at the door, the twins screaming in the background. "You're the best, Caleb," she said. Sabrina beamed when I told her about it later. "They're family," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I guess it was, back then. I wanted to fit in, to be part of her world. Saying yes felt like the right thing to do. Years passed, and those favors piled up like bricks. Myra's kids, Lily, Max, and Owen, started showing up at our house more often. Brandon was unreliable, always had been, and Mira leaned on me like I was some kind of stand-in dad. "Can you watch them for the afternoon?" she'd ask, already unloading their stuff before I could answer. Talia wasn't much better. Her twins, Sophie and Ben, were a handful, and with Jared pulling weekend shifts, she'd call me for help. Fixing a leaky faucet, picking up the kids from daycare, even driving them to soccer practice once when her car broke down. I'd grumble to myself sometimes, but I never said no. Sabrina would just laugh it off. "You're so patient," she'd say, like it was a badge of honor. Patient, reliable, that's what they all called me. But deep down, I started wondering, when did I sign up for this? I lean back in my chair now, rubbing my eyes. The office is quiet, just the sound of keyboards clicking around me. I think about those early days, how I let myself get pulled into their orbit. It wasn't like they forced me. I could have said no, could have drawn a line. But I didn't. I wanted Sabrina to be happy, and her sisters were part of the package. Every time I helped, they'd praise me, tell me how great I was. "You're like a second parent to them," Mira said once, after I spent a whole Sunday building a fort with her kids in our backyard. Sabrina nodded along, smiling. "He really is," she said. I didn't argue, didn't tell them I never wanted that role. I just kept going, saying yes because it was easier than fighting. Looking back, I can see the shift. It wasn't just favors anymore, it was expectations. If Mira had a work emergency, I was the first call. If Talia needed a break, she dropped the twins off without asking. Our house turned into a revolving door of kids and chaos, and I was the one holding it together. Sabrina didn't seem to mind. She'd chat with her sisters, sipping tea or wine, while I chased toddlers and cleaned up spills. "They need us," she'd say if I ever hinted at being tired. "Don't make a fuss, Caleb. It's what family does." I bite my tongue, nod, and keep going. But in the quiet moments, like now, alone at my desk, I'd feel this ache. I wanted boundaries, some space that was just mine. I wanted to say no without feeling like I was letting everyone down. The clock hits 5 p.m., and I pack up my laptop. On the drive home, I think about how it's been years of this, years of yes. I don't even know how to stop anymore. Sabrina's probably waiting for me, maybe with a list of things to do. Mira might show up again, kids in tow. Talia might call. And I'll say yes, because that's who I am to them, the helpful one, the guy who doesn't complain. But as I pull into our driveway, the house glowing warm against the rainy night, I feel that weight again. It's heavier now, pressing on my chest. I don't know how much longer I can carry it. Not forever, that's for sure. I'm sitting at my desk, the glow of my computer screen casting shadows across the room. It's late afternoon, and the office is winding down, people packing up, chatting about their plans. I've just finished a big project, a system upgrade that took weeks of late nights and early mornings. My boss clapped me on the shoulder earlier, said I'm in line for something bigger soon. It feels good, knowing I'm solid here, that I've carved out a space where I'm in control. My name's Caleb Royce, 36, and at work, I'm the guy who gets it done. But as I shut down my laptop and grab my keys, I know what's waiting for me at home. It's not the quiet evening I crave. It's the second shift, the one nobody asked if I wanted. The drive back to our house in Seattle is quick, the streets slick with rain. I pull into the driveway and see Talia's car already there, parked haphazardly like she was in a rush. I sigh, bracing myself. Sure enough, when I walk through the door, the twins, Sophie and Ben, are tearing through the living room, chasing each other with toy trucks. Sabrina's in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove, and Talia's leaning against the counter, scrolling her phone. Hey, babe, Sabrina says, glancing up with a smile. Talia had to drop by. Jared's working late again. Can you watch the twins for a bit? I set my bag down, my shoulders already tight. Sure, I mutter, because what else am I supposed to say? The twins spot me and barrel over, crashing into my legs. Uncle Caleb, Sophie yells, holding up a truck with a broken wheel. Fix it. Ben's tugging at my hand, babbling about a race they want to have. I force a smile, kneel down, and start tinkering with the toy while they bounce around me. Talia barely looks up from her phone. You're a saint, Caleb, she says, like it's a fact. Sabrina laughs from the kitchen. He really is. I don't feel like a saint. I feel like a guy who's too tired to argue. An hour later, Talia's gone, leaving the twins with us for the night because it's easier this way. I spend my evening wrangling them into pajamas, reading them stories, and cleaning up the mess they leave behind. Sabrina's asleep by the time I collapse on the couch, the house finally quiet. This is my life now, work all day, then come home to play dad to someone else's kids. It's been like this for years, ever since Mira and Talia figured out I wouldn't say no. Myra's got 3, Lily, Max, and Owen, and they're over all the time. Brandon, her ex, is a deadbeat, always has been, so she leans on me. Last weekend, she dropped them off unannounced, saying she had a thing to handle. I spent my Saturday building pillow forts and making mac and cheese while Sabrina caught up with her over coffee. You're so good with them, Mira said when she picked them up, like I'd won a prize. I wanted to tell her I didn't sign up to be their babysitter, but I didn't. I never do. It's easier to keep the peace. Sabrina doesn't see it, or maybe she doesn't want to. She's always been close with her sisters, 3 of them against the world, she says. I used to think it was sweet, how tight they were. But now, it feels like I'm the one paying for it. She doesn't thank me much anymore, doesn't seem to notice how drained I am. Our nights used to be ours, dinner, a movie, maybe more. Now, they're filled with kids or her sister's drama. I can't remember the last time we just sat together, alone. I miss her, miss us, but every time I try to bring it up, she shuts it down. They're family, Caleb, she'll say, her voice sharp. Don't be selfish. So I swallow it, let it sit heavy in my chest. The next day at work, I'm eating lunch in the break room when Donovan sits down across from me. He's a coworker, a good guy, divorced last year, raising his daughter solo. He's got this easy way about him, like nothing rattles him anymore. You look beat, man, he says, cracking open a soda. I shrug, picking at my sandwich. Long night. Talia's twins stayed over. He raises an eyebrow. Again? What are you, their live-in nanny? I laugh, but it's hollow. He leans back, studying me. Seriously, Caleb, you're always taking care of everyone else. When's the last time you did something for you? I don't have an answer. He shakes his head. Man, Are you a husband or a backup plan? You gotta figure that out. His words stick with me all day. Backup plan. Is that what I am? I think about it on the drive home, the rain smearing across my windshield. I've climbed the ladder at work, earned respect, built something I'm proud of. But at home, I'm just the guy who says yes, the one who picks up the slack. Myra's kids, Talia's twins, they're not mine, but I'm raising them half the time. Sabrina doesn't see the toll it takes. She's in her own world, tied up with her sisters, expecting me to keep everything running. I pull into the driveway, and there's Myra's van this time. I can already hear Owen crying inside. I sit there for a minute, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the house. Donovan's right. There's a crack forming, something I can't ignore much longer. I'm not sure what I am anymore, but I know I'm tired of this role. Really tired. I wake up to the sound of rain tapping against the bedroom window, a steady rhythm that matches the dull ache in my head. It's my 35th birthday today, and I'm lying here, staring at the ceiling, wondering why it doesn't feel special. My name's Caleb Royce, and I've been married to Sabrina for a decade now. I'm 36 as of this morning. I guess another year gone, another quiet milestone. I roll over, expecting to see her next to me. Maybe with a smile or a happy birthday, babe, but the bed's empty. The sheets are cold. I sit up, rubbing my eyes, and hear her voice drifting in from the kitchen. She's on the phone, laughing, probably with Mira or Talia. I don't get up right away. I just sit there, letting the day sink in. I'd hoped for something today, nothing big, just a moment that was ours. Work's been brutal lately, and I've been juggling her sister's kids on top of it. A quiet dinner, maybe a movie, just me and Sabrina, that's all I wanted. I didn't say it out loud, though. She's been distracted, planning some girls thing with Mira and Talia, and I didn't want to push. I shuffle into the bathroom, splash water on my face, and stare at myself in the mirror. 36. I don't look old, not really, still got my hair, a few lines around my eyes, but I feel it. Tired, worn, like I've been carrying more than I should. In the kitchen, Sabrina's pouring coffee, her phone tucked against her shoulder. Yeah, Mira, I'll be ready by noon, she says, then spots me. Oh, morning, babe. Happy birthday. She flashes a quick smile, but she's already turning back to her call. No, Talia, you bring the sunscreen. I stand there, waiting for her to hang up, but she doesn't. I grab a mug, pour myself some coffee, and lean against the counter. Big plans today? I ask, keeping my voice light. She nods, still half listening to her sisters. Yeah, we're doing a spa day. Been ages since we had a girls' trip. You're good here, right? I blink. Good here? It's my birthday. But she's not looking at me. She's texting now, her fingers flying over the screen. Sure, I say, because what else is there? She pecks my cheek on her way out. Thanks, Caleb. You're the best. The house feels too big once she's gone. I sit on the couch, flipping through channels, but nothing holds my attention. The rain's picking up outside, drumming harder against the roof. I think about calling someone, Donovan, maybe, but he's got his daughter this weekend. I don't want to bother him. My phone buzzes around 2 p.m., and I grab it, hoping it's Sabrina. It's a group text from her, Mira, and Talia. A blurry photo of them at the spa, all smiles, with a cake emoji and happy belated. I stare at it, my chest tightening. Belated? It's still my birthday. I don't reply. What's the point? I wander into the kitchen, grab a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet, and pour myself a glass. It's not even dark out yet, but I don't care. I sit at the table, sipping slow, letting the burn settle in my throat. This isn't how I pictured 36. I'd always thought birthdays were supposed to mean something. Cake, laughs, people who care. Last year, Myra's kids were here, and we made a mess with cupcakes. Sabrina had hugged me then, said, "You're the best uncle." But today, there's nothing. No kids, no wife, no noise. Just me and this bottle, and a house that feels like it's mocking me. I think about the years I've let slip by. I wanted things, still do. Travel, maybe to Europe or Japan, places I've only seen in pictures. Writing too. I used to scribble stories in notebooks, back before life got so full of everyone else. And kids of our own, me and Sabrina. We talked about it early on, how we'd raise them together, how I'd teach them to build things, like my dad taught me. But those dreams got buried under diapers and errands, and her sister's endless needs. I take another sip, the whiskey warming my gut. I've been on hold, waiting for a life that never starts, while Sabrina's out there living hers. The clock ticks past 6 p.m. No calls, no texts, Just that one stupid message with the cake emoji. I get up, pace the living room, then sit back down. I could have said something this morning, told her I wanted her here. But I didn't. I never do. I'm the guy who handles it, who doesn't make a fuss. That's what she loves about me, right? My patience, my reliability. I pour another glass, my hands steady even though my head's spinning. I think about Donovan's words from a while back. Are you a husband or a backup plan? I laughed it off then, but now it's clawing at me. Backup plan. That's what the day feels like. By 9 p.m., the bottle's half gone, and I'm sprawled on the couch, the TV flickering with some show I'm not watching. The rain's a roar now, drowning out the silence. I check my phone again, nothing. I imagine them at the spa, laughing, sipping wine, not even thinking about me. I'm not mad, not exactly. It's deeper than that, like a crack splitting open inside me. I've given them everything, my time, my energy, my days off, and this is what I get. A blurry photo and an empty house. I finish the glass, set it down hard on the table. Something's shifting, something I can't name yet. I'm done waiting for them to see me. Maybe it's time I see myself. I'm driving up the winding road to Lake Chelan, the tires humming against the pavement as the city fades behind me. It's a warm Saturday in late March, and the sun's breaking through the clouds, glinting off the water in the distance. My name's Caleb Royce, 36, and I'm supposed to be heading to a family getaway, something Sabrina's been planning for weeks. She's been buzzing about it, saying we all need a break, a chance to unwind. Me, her, Mira, Talia, their husbands, the kids, the whole crew. I wasn't thrilled about it, not after my birthday disappearing act, but she insisted. It'll be fun, Caleb, she said, her eyes bright. We'll rent a big cabin, swim, barbecue. You'll see. So I packed my bag, loaded the car with snacks and a cooler, and here I am, pulling up to the address she gave me. The cabin's nice, wooden, tucked among the trees, with a wide porch overlooking the lake. I park, grab my stuff, and head inside, expecting noise, kids running, adults laughing, the usual chaos. But it's quiet. Too quiet. I drop my bag by the door and call out, Sabrina? Anyone here? No answer. The living room's empty, just a couch and a coffee table with a stack of board games. I check the kitchen. Nothing. My stomach twists a little. Maybe they're out back, I think, stepping onto the deck. That's when I hear it, giggling, small feet pounding up the stairs from the basement. Myra's kids, Lily, Max, and Owen, burst out, followed by Talia's twins, Sophie and Ben. Uncle Caleb, Lily yells, throwing her arms around my legs. The others swarm me, all talking at once. I kneel down, trying to make sense of it. Hey, guys. Where's your mom? Where's Sabrina? Lily shrugs, tugging at my hand. They're not here. Can we play hide and seek? I frown, standing up. Not here? That doesn't add up. I pull out my phone, no signal out here, but my email's still loaded from earlier. There's a new message from Sabrina, sent an hour ago. I open it, and the words hit me like a punch. We're going to Hawaii. Take care of the kids. At least be useful for once. I read it again, then a third time, my hand shaking. Hawaii. They're gone, Sabrina, Mira, Talia, off on some trip, and I'm here with 5 kids, alone. Useful for once. The betrayal sinks in, sharp and cold. I look at the kids, their faces bright, oblivious. Owen's tugging at my shirt, asking for juice. Sophie's already running back inside, shouting about snacks. I take a deep breath, force a smile. Okay, let's get you guys settled, I say, my voice steady even though my head's spinning. I herd them into the kitchen, find some crackers and juice boxes in the cooler I brought. They sit at the table, chattering, while I lean against the counter, staring at that email. 10 years with Sabrina, and this is what she thinks of me, some errand boy, a babysitter she can dump and ditch. I think about my birthday, the spa day, all the times I've said yes. This isn't just a prank. It's a slap in the face. I could call her, scream, demand answers, but there's no signal, and honestly, what's the point? She's in the air by now, sipping a drink, laughing with her sisters. I'm here, surrounded by kids who aren't mine, in a cabin I didn't choose. I pour Owen another juice, wipe Max's sticky hands, and try to think. They didn't even pack much for the kids, just a couple bags with clothes and toys dumped by the door. No note, no plan, just that email. I sit down with them, playing along as Lily tells me about a fish she saw in the lake earlier. Can we catch it, Uncle Caleb? She asks. I nod, distracted. Maybe tomorrow, kiddo. The day drags on. I take them outside, Let them run around the yard while I sit on the porch, watching. The lake's calm, reflecting the trees, but inside, I'm a mess. I've been used before, errands, childcare, all of it. But this is different. It's deliberate, cruel. Sabrina's words echo in my head. At least be useful. I've spent years being useful, bending over backwards for her family, and this is my reward. The kids are fine, happy, even, but they're not my responsibility. Not like this. I think about driving them back to Seattle, dropping them at Myra's or Talia's place, but I don't even know where their dads are. Brandon's useless, and Jared's probably working. I'm stuck. By evening, they're winding down. I make sandwiches from what I brought, set up a movie on my laptop, some cartoon they all agree on. They pile onto the couch, giggling, while I sit in a chair, staring at the screen but not seeing it. My mind's racing. This isn't just about today, it's everything. The years of yes, the weight I've carried, the life I've let slip away. I've been a doormat, and they've walked all over me. But this time, it's too much. I can feel something breaking, something final. As the kids drift off, sprawled across the cushions, I make a decision. I'm done. Not just with this trip, but with all of it. They've pushed me too far, and I'm not going back. I'm sitting on the edge of the couch in this Lake Chelan cabin, the kids sprawled out around me, fast asleep. The cartoon's still playing on my laptop, a loop of bright colors and silly voices, but I'm not watching it. My name's Caleb Royce, 36, and I've just been hit with the kind of betrayal that doesn't fade with a good night's sleep. Sabrina's email is burned into my head. We're going to Hawaii. Take care of the kids. At least be useful for once. It's past midnight now, the lake outside dark and still, and I'm staring at my phone, the words replaying over and over. 5 kids, Myra's 3, Talia's twins, left with me like I'm some hired nanny. No warning, no discussion, just a middle finger in the form of a plane ticket they didn't buy me. I stand up, careful not to wake them, and step onto the porch. The air's cool, the night quiet except for the soft lapping of water against the shore. My hands are steady, but inside, I'm raging, not the loud kind, not yelling or smashing things, but a cold, clear anger that's been building for years. I think about all of it, the errands, the babysitting, the way Sabrina and her sisters have leaned on me like I'm a piece of furniture. I've let it happen, said yes too many times, but this? Leaving me with their kids while they jet off to Hawaii? It's not just selfish, it's a line crossed I can't uncross. I take a deep breath, the decision settling in my chest like a stone. I'm not playing their game anymore. I go back inside, grab my phone, and find a weak signal near the window. It's enough. I sit at the kitchen table, the kids' soft snores filling the room, and dial Child Protective Services. The line rings twice before a tired-sounding woman picks up. CPS, how can I assist you? She asks. I keep my voice low, calm, like I'm explaining a bug in a system at work. My name's Caleb Royce. I'm at a cabin in Lake Chelan with 5 kids, ages 3 to 9. They're my wife's nieces and nephews. She and her sisters left them with me and flew to Hawaii without my consent. I'm not their guardian. I need help. There's a pause, then she starts asking questions, names, ages, the email. I give her everything, reading Sabrina's message out loud. Stay where you are, she says. We'll send someone. Next, I call the police. Same story, same calm tone. The dispatcher's surprised but professional. We'll coordinate with CPS, he says. An officer will be there soon. I hang up, lean back in the chair, and wait. The kids are still out cold, Lily curled up with a pillow, Owen clutching a stuffed bear, the twins tangled in a blanket. They're innocent in this, just pawns in their mom's mess. I get up, grab some water, and sit with them, keeping them calm in case they wake up. Max stirs once, blinking at me. Uncle Caleb, he mumbles. Go back to sleep, buddy. I say, brushing his hair back. He does, and I feel a pang. None of this is their fault. While I wait, I play with them in my own way, quietly stacking their toys, making sure they're comfortable. I pull out my phone, snap a few photos of the scene, the kids, the bags they came with, the empty cabin. Evidence, I guess. I don't know what's coming, but I want it documented. An hour later, headlights flash through the window. A CPS worker, a woman named Janet, and a cop show up at the door. Janet's got a clipboard, the officer's got a notepad. I let them in, explain it all again. Here's the email, I say, showing them my phone. Janet reads it, her face tightening. This is abandonment, she says, almost to herself. The cop nods. We'll need statements from the parents when they're back. I hand over the kids' bags, give my statement. Name, relation, what happened? Janet's gentle with the kids, waking them slowly, telling them they're going on a little trip. They're groggy, confused, but they trust her. I help pack their stuff, my hands moving on autopilot. Owen clings to my leg, and I kneel down, give him a quick hug. You'll be okay, I tell him. It's all I can say. Once they're loaded into Janet's van, the cop shakes my hand. You did the right thing, he says. I nod, but I don't feel heroic, just empty. Back inside, I grab my bag and sit at the table, pulling up the group chat with Sabrina, Mira, and Talia. My fingers hover over the keys, then I type. The kids have been left unsupervised. Authorities have been contacted. Do not reach out to me again. I hit send, turn off my phone, and stare at the screen. It's done. They'll see it when they land. Probably blow up my phone with excuses, tears, anger. I don't care. I'm not engaging, not this time. I pack my cooler, lock the cabin, and head to my car. The drive back to Seattle is dark, the road empty. I feel the weight lifting, just a little, not relief, not yet, but a shift. I've spent years being their fix-it guy, their safety net. Now, they'll have to face this without me. And I'm walking away. I'm sitting in my car outside our house in Seattle, the engine off, the rain tapping against the windshield. It's been 3 days since I left the cabin at Lake Chelan, 3 days since I called CPS and the police on Sabrina, Mira, and Talia. My name's Caleb Royce, 36, and I've just turned my life upside down. Or maybe right side up, I'm not sure yet. My phone's been off since I sent that text. The kids have been left unsupervised. Authorities have been contacted. Do not reach out to me again. I haven't checked it, haven't wanted to. I know what's waiting. Messages, calls, chaos. I drove straight home from the lake, slept in the guest room, and went to work like nothing happened. But today, I can't avoid it anymore. They're back from Hawaii. I can feel it. I unlock the front door, step inside, and the house feels different, stale, like it's holding its breath. Sabrina's shoes aren't by the door, her jacket's not on the hook. She hasn't been here. I drop my keys on the counter, flick on the kitchen light, and sit at the table. The silence is loud, heavier than usual. I pull out my phone, power it on, and wait. It buzzes to life, notifications piling up, missed calls, voicemails, texts. Dozens of them, all from Sabrina, a few from Mira, one from Talia. I scroll through the texts first. Sabrina's start frantic. Caleb, what the hell did you do? Then angry. You humiliated us. CPS took the kids. Then pleading. They're your nieces and nephews. How could you? I listened to one voicemail. Her voice is shaking, furious. You've ruined everything, Caleb. Call me back. Now. I don't. I lean back, staring at the ceiling. They landed yesterday. I figure, straight into a mess they didn't expect. The police met them at the airport. I heard that much from a follow-up call with the CPS worker, Janet. She'd been professional, said the kids were safe, placed with temporary fosters while they investigated. Neglect charges were filed, she told me, against all three, Sabrina, Mira, Talia. I didn't ask for details, didn't need them. I'd given my statement, handed over the email, the photos. The rest was out of my hands. But I can imagine it. Sabrina's face when she saw the cops, Myra's panic, Talia's tears. They thought I'd just take it, like always. They were wrong. The fallout's hitting fast. Janet mentioned CPS opened cases on all three families. Myra's custody of Lily, Max, and Owen is restricted now, pending parenting classes. Talia's twins are under review too, since Jared wasn't even in the loop. Sabrina's got no kids of her own, but she's tangled in it. Abandonment, negligence, whatever the legal terms are. I don't know the full scope, don't want to. I just know her perfect image is cracking. She's always been the golden sister, the one who holds it together. HR manager, PDA mom to her nieces and nephews, the glue for Mira and Talia. Now that's gone. I heard from Donovan at work. His ex knows someone at Sabrina's company. Word spreading. Her boss isn't happy. I get up, grab a beer from the fridge, and sit on the couch. The house feels like a museum. Photos on the walls, memories of a life I don't fit into anymore. Sabrina's tried calling again. My phone buzzes on the table, her name flashing. I let it ring. She'll probably show up soon, banging on the door, demanding I fix this. But I'm not fixing anything. Not this time. I think about the kids. Owen's little bear, Lily's fish story. They're okay. I tell myself. CPS has them. This isn't on me. I sip the beer, the cold biting my throat. I've spent years cleaning up their messes. Brandon's flakiness, Jared's long hours, Sabrina's blind spots. I'm done. The doorbell rings an hour later. I don't move. It rings again, then there's pounding. Caleb, open the door. It's Sabrina. I stay put, staring at the TV I haven't turned on. She yells for a while, accusations, sobs, the works. You're throwing us under the bus. After everything we've been through. I hear her voice crack, but I don't budge. Eventually, she stops, and I hear her car peel out. I finish the beer, toss the bottle, and lie back. She's wrong. It's not me throwing them under anything. They did this. They left their kids, left me, thinking I'd just roll over. I didn't. The next day at work, I keep my head down. Donovan corners me at lunch, eyes wide. Heard about the Hawaii stunt. You okay, man? I nod, picking at my food. Yeah, it's over. He grins, slaps my shoulder. Good for you. About time you stood up. I don't feel victorious, just tired. But he's right. The aftershocks are still coming, legal battles, family fallout, Sabrina's career wobbling. None of it's my problem anymore. I go home that night, lock the door, and sleep in the guest room again. My phone stays off. They can scream, cry, beg all they want. I'm not their anchor now. I'm free, or at least, I'm starting to be. I'm standing in my new apartment downtown, the keys still cold in my hand, looking out at the Seattle skyline through a wall of windows. It's been 4 months since the Lake Chelan mess, 4 months since I walked away from Sabrina and her sister's chaos. My name's Caleb Royce, 36, and I'm starting over. The house is gone, sold in the divorce, split clean down the middle. Sabrina fought it at first, but her lawyer told her she didn't have a leg to stand on, not after the neglect charges and the CPS reports. I didn't want the fight anyway. I just wanted out. Now, I'm here, a one-bedroom place, high up, with bare walls and a view that feels like a fresh breath. It's mine, and that's enough. Work's been my lifeline. I transferred departments a month ago, same tech firm, new team. It's a step up, leading a small crew on system overhauls. My old boss wasn't thrilled, but he got it. You need a change, he said, and he was right. The new gig keeps me busy, focused, less time to think about the past. Donovan's still around, popping by my desk with coffee and divorcee wisdom. You're looking lighter, man, he said last week. I shrugged, but he's not wrong. The weight's lifting, slow but sure. I'm not the guy who says yes to everything anymore. I'm figuring out who I am without that. Outside work, I've been trying new things. A coworker mentioned writing groups, said they meet up downtown. I'd always liked writing, used to fill notebooks with stories before life got too loud. So I went, nervous as hell, clutching a beat-up journal. That's where I met Juno. She's the one running it, tall, wild hair, a laugh that cuts through the room. She's a novelist, self-published, with a way of talking that pulls you in. First night, she read something she wrote, sharp, raw, about breaking free. It hit me hard. After, she came over, asked what I was working on. Nothing yet, I said, sheepish. She grinned. Start. You've got something to say, I can tell. I did, scribbled a page about being the reliable one. How it ate me alive. She read it, nodded. Keep going. This is real. That was 2 months ago. Now, I'm at the group every week, filling pages with stuff I didn't know I had in me, emotional labor, family traps, the slow grind of giving too much. Juno pushes me, not gentle but not mean either. Stop living for them, she said once, tapping my notebook. Write for you. I took it online, posted an essay on a blog I started, just to see. It blew up, hundreds of shares, comments from people who got it. I've been there, they wrote. You're not alone. I stared at my screen stunned. I'd spent years feeling invisible, and now strangers saw me. A podcast host reached out, some guy named Leo, big on personal growth stuff. Your story's powerful, he said. Come talk about it. I did. Last week, my first interview, voice shaking but steady by the end. It aired yesterday. Donovan texted me. Heard you, man. Damn proud. I'm sitting on my couch now, a cheap one I bought secondhand, sipping coffee instead of whiskey. The apartment's still sparse, just a bed, a table, this couch, but it's mine. No kids' toys, no sisters dropping by unannounced. My phone buzzes, Sabrina again. She still texts sometimes, less angry now, more desperate. I don't answer. The divorce isn't final yet, but it's close. She's got her own mess, CPS classes, a demotion at work, Mira and Talia leaning on her harder than ever. I don't know the details, don't care to. I'm out of their orbit. I think about that email at least be useful and how it broke something in me. But it built something too. I'm not useful now. I'm me. Juno's been a surprise. She's not like Sabrina, doesn't need me to fix anything, doesn't lean. She's just there, challenging me, laughing at my bad jokes. Last week, she dragged me to a poetry reading me, in a room full of artsy types, feeling out of place. She nudged me aft. You fit more than you think. I'm not sure about that, but I like how she sees me. Not a crutch, just a guy. We've been hanging out more, coffee, walks by the water. It's light, easy, nothing heavy yet. I'm not rushing. I've got time. I grab my laptop, open the blog. Another essay's half done. About saying no, how it's not selfish, how it's survival. I type, the words flowing faster now. Juno's right. I've got something to say. The podcast got me thinking too. Maybe a book, someday. I'm not the Caleb who hauled groceries for Talia or built forts for Myra's kids. I'm the guy who stood up, walked away, started over. My phone buzzes again. Not Sabrina this time, but a comment on the blog. Thank you. This changed how I see my life. I smile, small but real. I'm not just needed anymore. I'm seen. And that's a code I can live by. I'm sitting at my desk in the new department, the hum of the office around me like a steady pulse. It's been a year since the Lake Chelan disaster. A year since I turned my back on Sabrina and her sister's mess. My name's Caleb Royce, 36, and I've built something solid here. New apartment, new job, new life. The divorce finalized 2 months ago, clean and quiet. Sabrina got half the house money. I got my freedom. I don't hear much from her anymore. Just the occasional text, ignored, deleted. Works good, leading my team, solving problems, feeling like I matter. Outside, the Seattle rain streaks the windows, but inside, I'm calm. That's when the intercom buzzes. Caleb, someone's here for you. The receptionist says. My stomach drops. I know who it is before I even stand up. I walk to the lobby, and there she is, Sabrina, standing by the front desk, looking smaller than I remember. Her hair's pulled back, tight, and her eyes are shadowed, like sleep's been dodging her. She's in a coat too thin for the weather, hands twisting together. I stop a few feet away, arms crossed. What are you doing here? I ask, voice flat. She looks up, startled, like she didn't expect me to sound so cold. Caleb, she starts, stepping closer. I needed to see you. I don't move. A year ago, I'd have softened, asked what was wrong. Now I just wait. She takes a breath, and it spills out. We need help. Things are falling apart. I let her talk. She's tired, she says, worn down by the last year. The neglect charge is stuck. Mira lost partial custody. Talia is still in classes, and Sabrina's caught in the middle. Legal bills piled up, draining their savings. Myra's ex, Brandon, is suing for full custody now, and Talia is fighting Jared over money. Sabrina's job took a hit. Demoted after the scandal, no more promotions in sight. We're drowning, she says, voice cracking. The family's a mess. Myra's a wreck. Talia's barely holding on. We trusted you, Caleb. You're still our family. She looks at me, eyes pleading, like I'm the lifeline she's been waiting for. Please. We need you. I stand there, letting her words hang between us. A year ago, this would have pulled me in guilt, duty, that old habit of fixing things. I'd have said yes, jumped back into their chaos, because that's who I was. But now, I feel nothing. Not anger, not pity, just a quiet clarity. I think about the cabin, the kids, that email, at least be useful. I think about the nights I spent alone, the days I gave up, the life I lost trying to hold them together. She's asking me to dive back into that, to save them again. I look at her, really look, tired, desperate, but still expecting me to bend. She hasn't changed. They haven't changed. No, I say, simple, firm. Her eyes widen, like she didn't hear me right. What? She whispers. I uncross my arms, step back. I'm not your family anymore, Sabrina. I spent 10 years being useful, running your errands, raising your sister's kids, keeping your world from falling apart. You didn't trust me, you used me. And when I stopped, you threw me away. She shakes her head, tears welling up. That's not true. We needed you. I needed you. I cut her off, voice steady. Trust isn't control. Family isn't obligation. You don't get to dump your mess on me and call it love. I'm done. She stares, mouth open, like I've slapped her. Caleb, please, she says, reaching out. I step back again, out of reach. You've got Mira, Talia, your parents. Figure it out. I did my time. Her hand drops, and she starts crying quiet, shaky sobs. You've changed, she says, almost accusing. I nod. Yeah, I had to. She wipes her face, tries one more time. We're falling apart without you. I look at her, calm, final. That's not my problem anymore. Goodbye, Sabrina. I turn, walk back to my desk, and don't look back. The rest of the day, I'm on autopilot, running code, answering emails, but my head's replaying it. She showed up unannounced, like old times, thinking I'd cave. A year ago, I might have. But Juno's voice echoes in my mind, stop living for them. My blog's full of it too, comments from people who've been where I was, trapped by guilt, breaking free. I'm not that Caleb anymore. I clock out at 5, head home to my apartment. It's quiet, mine, just a few books, a plant Juno gave me, the city lights outside. I make coffee, sit on the couch, and let the moment settle. Sabrina's gone. They're gone. Later, I open my laptop, start writing. It's about this, her showing up, the ask, saying no. The words come easy, raw. I don't owe them anything, not my time, not my peace. I've got my own life now, work, writing, Juno's laugh when we grab drinks. Sabrina's tears don't pull me back. They can't. I finish the draft, save it, and lean back, sipping coffee. The rain stopped outside, the sky clearing. I feel lighter than I have in years. She left without a word, and I'm still here, free. That's all I need. I'm standing by the window in my downtown Seattle apartment, the city sprawling out below me, lights flickering against the night sky. It's been over a year since I left Sabrina and her sisters behind, over a year since I started rebuilding from the ground up. My name's Caleb Royce, 36, 37 now, I suppose, though I didn't make a fuss about my last birthday. The air's cool tonight, and I'm holding a mug of tea, the steam curling up in lazy swirls. No whiskey anymore. That's old Caleb, the one who drowned his nights in a bottle. This is new Caleb, and I'm finally starting to know him. The apartment's small but mine, books on the shelves, a desk cluttered with notes, a life I've chosen, not one I've been handed. Work steady, better than ever. I'm leading my team, running projects that matter, earning nods from the higher-ups. It's not just a job now, it's a piece of me, something I'm good at, something I control. Donovan still swings by my desk, cracking jokes, telling me I'm living the dream. He's not far off. The divorce is long done, the house sold, the money split. Sabrina's a ghost, texts stopped months ago, and I don't check for them anymore. Mira and Talia are out of my orbit too. I heard through Donovan's ex that they're still scrambling, legal messes, custody fights, bills piling up. I don't dig for details. That's their world, not mine. Writing's become my anchor. The blog took off thousands of readers now, people emailing me their stories, saying I've helped them see their own traps. That essay about Sabrina's visit, the ask, went viral, shared across platforms, picked up by a local paper. Leo, the podcast guy, had me back for a second round. You're a voice, Caleb, he said. I laughed, awkward, but it stuck with me. Juno's been pushing too. She's got me working on a book, a real one. We meet up at her place or mine, pages spread out, her scribbling notes in the margins. You're getting there, she says, and I believe her. It's about breaking free, saying no, finding yourself when everyone else has taken their piece. It's my story, but it's bigger now. Juno's more than a writing buddy these days. We've been dating a few months, slow, easy, nothing forced. She's different from Sabrina, doesn't need me to carry her, just wants me around. Last weekend, we walked along the waterfront, her arm looped through mine, talking about nothing and everything. She's free-spirited, sharp, calls me out when I drift into old habits. You're not their mule anymore, she said once, half teasing, half serious. She's right. With her, it's light, coffee dates, late-night talks, her laugh filling the gaps I didn't know were there. I'm not rushing it, but I like where it's going. She sees me, not what I can do for her. My circle's small but real. Donovan's a constant, dinner at his place sometimes, his daughter drawing me pictures I stick on my fridge. The writing group's steady too, a handful of us, meeting weekly, sharing drafts. They're not family, not like Sabrina's clan, but they're mine, people who get me, who don't ask for more than I want to give. I've got boundaries now, lines I didn't know I could draw. A guy at work asked me to cover his shift last month. Old Caleb would have said yes, no questions. New Caleb said, "Sorry, I've got plans." And I did, writing A Quiet Night In. It felt good, that no? It's power, not guilt. I sipped my tea, the warmth spreading through me. The skyline's beautiful tonight, crisp, alive. I think about how far I've come. A year ago, I was at that cabin, reeling from Sabrina's email, calling CPS, walking away. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it saved me. I was drowning in their needs, kids, errands, endless favors, until I wasn't. Now, I'm here, standing in my own space, living my own life. My phone buzzes on the table. A text from Mira, first in months. "Caleb, I'm sorry," it says. Nothing else. I stare at it, waiting for the old pull, guilt, duty. It doesn't come. I set the phone down, don't reply. She's too late. I'm not their fix anymore. I grab my laptop, settle on the couch, and open a new document. Words flow, about this moment, the tea, the city, the me I've found. Saying no saved my life. I type. I thought being reliable was love. But real love? It doesn't use you up. I pause, read it back. It's true. Sabrina's love was a leash. Myra's, Talia's too. Juno's is different, open, free. I keep writing, the page filling fast. This is my story, my ending. Not theirs. I finish, save it, and lean back, the mug warm in my hands. The city hums outside, and I smile, small, real. I'm finally me, and that's more than enough. I had always known that Alyssa came from wealth, but I never imagined her father would humiliate me like that. Sitting in their grand home, surrounded by opulence I had never experienced. My heart pounded as I clutched the small velvet box inside my pocket. My fingers twitched against the fabric of my trousers, damp with nervous sweat. I believed love would be enough. I was wrong. The room smelled of aged wood and expensive cologne, a scent that clung to the very air, reminding me that I didn't belong here. Across from me, Gerald Whitmore sat like a king on his throne, his sharp gaze piercing through me as if assessing a peasant who dared to seek his daughter's hand. Alyssa sat beside him, her hands folded neatly on her lap, eyes cast downward. I cleared my throat, forcing confidence into my voice. "Sir, I love your daughter, and I want to marry her. I know I don't come from money, but I never got to finish. A lowly man like you?" Gerald scoffed, his upper lip curling as he leaned back in his chair. "A high school graduate with no real career? What do you think you can offer her? A life of struggle? Misery? You're not even worth my daughter's time." The words hit harder than I expected, but I clenched my fists beneath the table, swallowing the lump in my throat. I had been poor my entire life. I knew what it felt like to be looked down upon, but never like this. Never with such absolute disgust. And then, he did something I would never forget. He picked up his delicate china teacup, its handle glinting under the chandelier's glow, and casually tossed the contents at me. The lukewarm tea splashed across my shirt, soaking into my skin, carrying the weight of my humiliation with it. I froze. My ears rang, my pulse pounded. Every instinct screamed at me to lash out, to say something, anything. But the only thing more crushing than his words, more humiliating than the tea dripping down my chest, was Alyssa's silence. She didn't protest. She didn't defend me. She just sat there, frozen, unable to meet my eyes. At that moment, I understood everything. She wasn't going to fight for me. Slowly, I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the polished hardwood floor. I didn't trust myself to speak, to argue, to beg. I muttered a quiet "excuse me" and walked out, my head held high even as my pride lay in ruins. That night, my phone buzzed. "Alyssa, I'm so sorry. Please, let's talk." I stared at the message for a long time before turning off my phone. Gerald Whitmore had made one thing painfully clear. I would never be enough. That was the end of us. Or so I thought. I buried myself in work. It was the only way I knew how to silence the ache in my chest, to push past the gnawing sense of inadequacy that had settled in my bones the night I walked out of the Whitmore estate. Love wasn't enough. Hard work had to be. Being raised by a single mother had already taught me resilience. I knew what it meant to struggle, to make sacrifices, to fight for every opportunity that came my way. There was no safety net for people like us. If you fell, You hit the ground hard. And I had no intention of falling again. I took every shift I could at Rivers and Burke Law Firm, the small yet respected practice that had taken a chance on me. I started as a clerk, filing paperwork, organizing documents, and assisting the junior attorneys. It wasn't much, but it was more than I had before. And I refused to let anyone, especially Gerald Whitmore, be right about me. Lucas Rivers, my boss, saw something in me. Where others dismissed me as a nobody from the wrong side of town, he saw potential. He was more of a father to me than my own had ever been. He taught me how to navigate the legal world, how to be meticulous, how to think 5 steps ahead of my opponent. He was tough, but in the way that made you stronger. If you want to survive in this business, you need more than intelligence, Lucas had told me one night when I stayed late to study legal drafts. You need grit. Clients don't just want a smart lawyer, they want a fighter. So, I became a fighter. I was the first one in the office every morning and the last one to leave at night. I read case files until my eyes burned, took notes until my fingers ached. I absorbed everything. The way the attorneys argued in court, the strategies they used, the way they carried themselves. I studied case law until I knew it inside and out. I treated every task, no matter how small, like it was the most important thing in the world. And it paid off. Within 2 years, I wasn't just some clerk fetching coffee. I was trusted with legal research, drafting legal arguments, even assisting in depositions. Lucas began calling on me to sit in on important meetings, and slowly, my name started to carry weight within the firm. Still, no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't erase her. Alyssa faded into the background of my life, but she never truly disappeared. I told myself she didn't matter anymore, that what we had was over, that her silence in her father's house was the only answer I needed. But some nights, when the office was empty, and the only sound was the dull hum of the city outside, I would catch myself thinking about her. Did she regret not speaking up? Did she miss me? Did she ever wonder if she had made a mistake? I never reached out. I refused to be the man who begged. And as time passed, I convinced myself that I had moved on. Then, reality decided to test that lie. One evening, I was working late when a junior associate passed by my desk, flipping through a tabloid. The headline caught my eye before I could stop myself from looking. Whitmore heiress engaged to real estate mogul. Alyssa. I don't know why I stared at the article longer than I should have. It shouldn't have mattered. I had no right to feel anything about it. But there was a photo of her, standing beside some polished, perfect man in a navy suit. He had his arm around her waist, and she was smiling, that same smile that used to be mine. I closed the tabloid and got back to work. That night, I didn't sleep. I told myself it was because I had too much on my mind, too much ambition, too many things to focus on. But the truth sat like a weight on my chest. I had spent years becoming the man I wished I had been the day I walked into her father's house. And now, it didn't matter. The girl I had once loved, the one I had been willing to fight for, was marrying someone else. It should have been a wake-up call, a final confirmation that she was part of my past. But instead, it lit a fire in me. I doubled down on my work. I pushed harder than ever before. If I couldn't have her, I would have something bigger, success. And that was the beginning of the next stage of my life, one where I refused to be forgotten. 10 years passed, a decade of struggle, of discipline, of becoming the man they all said I could never be. I wasn't just a clerk anymore. I wasn't just the boy who had walked into the Whitmore estate, naive enough to believe that love was all I needed. No, that version of me had died the night I walked out of that house, tea staining my shirt, dignity crushed beneath the weight of rejection. I had rebuilt myself, piece by piece, with nothing but determination and sheer force of will. With Lucas Rivers pushing me, I had studied relentlessly. I took night classes, burned through legal textbooks, spent years memorizing case law. I sacrificed sleep, relationships, any semblance of a personal life. Nothing mattered except the goal, to become an attorney. And I did. I passed the bar exam, and when I walked into Rivers and Burke Law Firm that day, it was no longer as an assistant or a clerk or a struggling man trying to find his place. I walked in as Callum Hayes, ESQ, a full-fledged attorney. My reputation grew fast. At first, I was handed small cases, Contract disputes, minor settlements, nothing flashy. But I won. Every single time. I prepared for every case like I was stepping into a war zone. I anticipated every argument, studied every opposing lawyer's tactics. I didn't just represent my clients. I fought for them like their lives depended on it. It didn't take long before people started to notice. I was no longer Callum, the poor kid with no future. Now, I was the attorney who never lost. The lawyer people whispered about in court hallways. The man clients fought to have on their side. And then fate decided to mock me. One morning, I was at the courthouse, briefing my client before a hearing, when I felt someone's eyes on me. The sensation crawled up my spine, a presence so familiar it made my stomach tighten. I turned, and there he was, Gerald Whitmore, the same man who had humiliated me all those years ago, the same man who had sneered at me, dismissed me as nothing more than an insect beneath his shoe. But this time, something was different. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't looking at me like I was beneath him. He looked shocked. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by something else, something he probably never thought he'd feel when looking at me. Uncertainty. I didn't say a word. I simply held his gaze, unflinching, and then turned away. I had won before a single word had even been spoken. At least, that's what I thought, until I learned what he was doing there. He wasn't just passing by. He was opposing counsel. I found out when I walked into the courtroom, my suit perfectly pressed, my confidence unshaken, and saw him standing on the other side of the aisle. It was almost poetic. Gerald Whitmore was representing the defendant in a high-profile divorce case. The kind of case that was a feeding frenzy for the press, a scandal that would be dissected across every media outlet in the city. And me? I was representing the plaintiff, a woman who had suffered years of domestic abuse, infidelity, and financial manipulation at the hands of her husband. A woman who was terrified but determined to fight back, to finally reclaim her life. I had spent weeks preparing for this case. I knew every single detail, every piece of evidence. The photos of bruises hidden under long sleeves, the financial records proving years of stolen wealth, the text messages from her husband to his multiple mistresses, taunting her with his infidelity. Gerald smirked when he saw me across the courtroom, like he still saw the same boy from 10 years ago. I let him believe it. I let him believe he had the upper hand, that I was still that desperate kid, out of my depth, still beneath him. And then, I destroyed him. I tore his client's defense apart with cold, hard evidence. Every argument he made, I countered it twice as hard. Every loophole he tried to exploit, I shut it down before he could finish his sentence. By the time the judge ruled in our favor, Gerald was ashen-faced, his hands gripping the table so tightly his knuckles turned white. Full custody to my client, a $30,000 alimony payout, a $1,000 monthly child support payment. His client had lost everything, and so had he. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I simply stood there, unwavering, as he finally understood. I was not the same man he had dismissed years ago. When I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't need validation. I didn't need to hear him acknowledge my success. His silence was enough. But fate wasn't done yet, because just when I thought I had buried the past, it came knocking at my door. And it looked a hell of a lot like Alyssa Whitmore. I wasn't expecting to see her again. After that courtroom victory, I thought that was it. The past was exactly where it belonged, behind me. Gerald Whitmore had seen what I had become, had watched me strip away every ounce of power he once wielded over me, and he had been forced to swallow it. That should have been the end. But life had other plans. It happened 3 days later. Alyssa Whitmore walked into my law firm. I had been at my desk, scanning through a contract when my secretary, Lisa, peeked into my office with a hesitant look on her face. "You have a visitor," she said, clearing her throat. "No appointment, but she insists it's urgent." I barely glanced up. "Tell them to book a consultation. It's Alyssa Whitmore." That got my attention. For a moment, I didn't move. I just sat there, the weight of her name settling over me like a ghost from another life. I hadn't seen her in 10 years. Not since that night her father threw tea at me. Not since she sat there in silence, too afraid to speak up. What the hell was she doing here? Send her in. The door opened, and there she was. Time had changed her, but not in the way I expected. She was still beautiful, tall and elegant, with those same deep brown eyes. But there was something different now. A tiredness in her expression, a weight pressing down on her shoulders. Her hands clutched a folder, fingers tight against the edges. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Didn't expect to ever see you again, Alyssa. She let out a breath, like she had been holding it in since she walked through the door. I wouldn't have come if I had another choice. I arched a brow. Is that supposed to make me feel special? Her lips parted, but whatever she wanted to say, she swallowed it down. Instead, she stepped forward, placing the folder on my desk. I need your help. I didn't reach for it. Not yet. Help. I repeated, leaning forward. You didn't need my help when your father threw me out of your house. Didn't need my help when you let him humiliate me. But now, 10 years later, suddenly you do? She flinched. Good. I didn't owe her anything. If she had expected me to fall over myself to hear her out, she had come to the wrong man. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. She just stared at me, something unreadable flickering across her face. And then, she whispered, My mother is trapped, Callum. I stilled. Trapped? She nodded, her voice quieter now. My father. He controls everything. Her accounts, her house, her life. She doesn't leave the mansion anymore. He's broken her. She's too scared to fight back. That was when I finally reached for the folder. And what I saw made my stomach turn. Photographs. Alyssa's mother, Marianne Whitmore, looking like a shadow of the woman I vaguely remembered. There were pictures of bruises, of hospital reports that listed accidental falls over and over again. But most damning of all were the surveillance photos. Gerald Whitmore with multiple women, often younger, parading them around different high-end locations. Some were in hotel lobbies, some in restaurants. All of them damning. I clenched my jaw. And what do you expect me to do with this? Help her get out. Her voice cracked. Help me get her out. I exhaled sharply. I had spent 10 years teaching myself to forget about this family, to erase their name from my mind. And now, here she was, dragging me right back into their mess. There are 1,000 lawyers in this city, I said, flipping the folder closed. Why come to me? Alyssa lifted her chin. Because you're the only one who wants to see my father burn as badly as I do. She wasn't wrong. I should have told her to leave. Should have reminded her that she made her choice a long time ago. But I wasn't that kind of man. I wasn't Gerald Whitmore. I shut the folder and stood. First, we get her to safety. Alyssa's breath hitched. You'll help? I looked her dead in the eye. I'll make sure your father loses everything. That night, I arranged for Marianne Whitmore to be moved to a safe house outside the city. Somewhere discreet, somewhere Gerald wouldn't find her. I made the necessary calls, set the paperwork in motion. The next morning, Gerald Whitmore received legal papers. A petition for divorce. By noon, he called. I answered, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. You think this is revenge? His voice was dripping with fury, a barely contained snarl. You did this, didn't you, Callum? You turned my daughter against me. I remained calm. Your wife wants out, Whitmore. You can fight it, but I promise you, you'll lose. Silence. For the first time in his life, Gerald Whitmore was powerless. And I was just getting started. The call ended with Gerald Whitmore's silence, but I knew better than to mistake it for surrender. The man had built his life on control, power, and dominance. He wasn't going to roll over quietly. But what he hadn't realized yet was that I wasn't the same man he had dismissed a decade ago. I expected retaliation. What I didn't expect was Alyssa showing up at my office again. This time, with nowhere else to go. She arrived late in the evening, just as I was finishing a deposition. Lisa, my secretary, peeked in hesitantly. She's back. I didn't need to ask who. This time, when Alyssa walked in, she wasn't as composed as before. There was no mask of quiet confidence, no carefully chosen words. She looked shaken. Her coat was damp from the rain outside. Her hair pulled into a messy ponytail, and her hands trembled as she clutched her purse. He knows, she said, closing the door behind her. I leaned back in my chair, watching her carefully. What did he do? She let out a breath, one hand pressing against her forehead. He cornered my mother's driver. Threatened him. He's furious. He says she's not leaving him. Of course he did. I had anticipated this. Men like Gerald Whitmore don't lose control easily. He had spent decades keeping his wife beneath his thumb, twisting the world to suit his needs. He would see this as a betrayal, as an insult to his authority. But he had underestimated me once, and he was about to pay for it again. I stood up, grabbing my jacket. Pack a bag. You're coming with me. Alyssa hesitated. What? He's going to come after you next. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number. And if you think he'll play fair, you don't know him as well as I do. She exhaled shakily, nodding as she ran a hand over her forehead. Where are we going? Somewhere he can't touch you. The drive to the safe house was quiet. Rain drummed against the windshield, the rhythmic sound filling the silence between us. Alyssa sat in the passenger seat, arms wrapped around herself, staring out into the night. I had seen her in many ways before, poised, confident, elegant, but never like this, never fragile, never scared. She had spent her life under the illusion that her father was simply strict, that his overbearing control was just a reflection of his love for their family. But now, she was finally seeing the truth. Gerald Whitmore wasn't just controlling. He was a tyrant. Thank you, she said softly, breaking the silence, for helping my mother. I kept my eyes on the road. She deserves a life of her own. He never should have taken that from her. She hesitated before speaking again. I should have spoken up that night. I knew exactly which night she meant. The night I walked into her father's house, ring in my pocket, foolish enough to believe that love was enough. The night she had sat there, silent, as he humiliated me, as he stripped away my dignity piece by piece. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Yes, I said, voice steady. You should have. She swallowed hard, nodding. She didn't try to defend herself. She didn't make excuses. For the first time, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. But regret didn't change the past. The safe house was a secluded estate just outside the city, guarded, discreet, nearly impossible to track. It had once belonged to a former client who owed me more than a few favors. When we pulled up, Marianne Whitmore was already inside, sitting on the couch, hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked up when she saw Alyssa, her face softening with relief. You're here, she whispered. Alyssa rushed forward, dropping to her knees in front of her mother. Are you okay? Marianne nodded, but I saw the fear in her eyes. Years of abuse, control, and manipulation don't disappear overnight. She was still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Gerald to burst through the door and drag her back. I sat down across from them, resting my elbows on my knees. He's going to fight this. Marianne's hands trembled. I know, but he's already lost. Alyssa glanced at me. How? I leaned back, steepling my fingers. Because I'm going to make sure the entire city knows exactly who he is. Alyssa frowned. I don't understand. I tapped the folder that contained the evidence of his affairs. We're not just filing for divorce. We're taking his entire legacy down with it. Marianne's voice wavered. I don't care about revenge. I just want to be free. I met her gaze. Freedom comes at a price. But I'll make sure he's the one paying it. She hesitated before nodding. Alyssa sat beside her mother, silent, watching me carefully. She had come to me for help. But now, I could tell, she was beginning to see me differently. Not as the boy her father once belittled, but as the man who had the power to destroy him. And I was just getting started. The legal papers were filed the next morning. It wasn't just a petition for divorce. It was a declaration of war. I had spent years preparing for cases like this. High profile, brutal, and merciless. The difference was, this time, it wasn't just about my client. It was personal. By noon, Gerald Whitmore received the papers. By 12:15, he was calling my office. I let it ring. I wasn't interested in his threats, his rage, or whatever desperate attempt he'd make to scare his wife into submission. I already knew what his next move would be. He'd fight. He'd use his wealth, his power, his connections. And I was going to take them all away from him. The press caught wind of the case by the afternoon. I had anticipated this. A divorce filing alone wouldn't be enough to ruin him. Gerald was a master manipulator. He'd spin the narrative, turn himself into the victim, convince his wealthy friends that his wife was ungrateful and that the media was blowing things out of proportion. That was why I had given the press something they couldn't ignore. The photos, the surveillance footage, the financial records proving that Gerald had been siphoning money from his wife's accounts into his private investments for years. By 5 p.m., every major news outlet in the city was covering it. By 6 p.m., Gerald was on TV, denying everything. "This is nothing but an attack on my character," he spat at the cameras. "A smear campaign orchestrated by a bitter woman and an opportunistic lawyer. There is no truth to these allegations." I turned off the TV and smirked. He was already playing defense. Good. The night was restless. Not because I was worried. I had anticipated every counterattack Gerald would try to throw my way, but because Alyssa wasn't handling it well. She had spent the evening pacing the safe house, her phone clutched in her hand, staring at her father's media statement like it was some kind of personal betrayal. I finally found her standing by the window, arms wrapped around herself. "You should stop reading that garbage," I told her, crossing my arms. She didn't look at me. "You think this is a game, don't you?" I exhaled. "No, Alyssa. I think this is a fight. One we need to win." She finally turned, her eyes flashing with frustration. "Do you even care about my mother in all of this? Or is this just about proving a point?" That stung. I took a step closer, voice calm but firm. "I don't fight battles I don't believe in." She searched my face, looking for something, doubt, hesitation, maybe even a trace of the boy she once knew. But that boy was long gone. "He's going to come after you," she said quietly. I smiled. "He already did." She frowned. "What?" I walked to my desk and picked up an envelope, one that had been waiting for me at my office when I returned this evening. I handed it to her. She pulled out the papers inside and paled. "A lawsuit? Defamation," I said, shoving my hands in my pockets. "Gerald suing me personally. Claims I orchestrated this to ruin his career." She shook her head, disbelief flickering across her face. "Can he win?" I laughed. "Not a chance." She let out a shaky breath, lowering the papers. "You're not scared?" "No," I said simply. "He is." That was why he was acting so recklessly, why he was grasping at whatever straws he could find. Because he knew he was losing. And he was right. The next morning, we escalated. I had filed a motion for a temporary restraining order against Gerald, citing emotional distress and potential retaliation. By 10 a.m., a judge granted it. By noon, Gerald was forced to leave his own estate. He was furious. I received an email from his lawyer, one of his few remaining allies, demanding a settlement meeting. It was a desperate move, an attempt to end this before it got worse. I refused, because it was already too late for him. That afternoon, Lucas Rivers, my mentor and the only person I trusted in this industry, walked into my office. He sat down, tossing a newspaper onto my desk. "You're making a lot of noise, kid." I glanced at the headline. "Whitmore Empire Under Siege. Scandal and Legal Battle Threaten Legacy." I shrugged. "He deserves worse." Lucas chuckled. "I don't disagree, but be careful. A man like Whitmore doesn't go down easy. He's already falling." Lucas studied me for a long moment before nodding. "Just make sure you don't fall with him." By nightfall, the cracks in Gerald's life were beginning to split wide open. His law firm, once one of the most powerful in the state, was losing clients by the hour. His business partners were distancing themselves. His reputation was circling the drain. And Alyssa was beginning to see something she had never seen before. Me, not as the boy she once knew, not as the man her father belittled, but as the man who was going to bring her father to his knees. And for the first time, she wasn't scared of it. She was watching it happen. And maybe, just maybe, she wanted to see him fall just as badly as I did. Gerald Whitmore's downfall wasn't a single catastrophic event. It was a series of carefully placed cuts, each one bleeding him out until he had nothing left. And I made sure he felt every single one of them. It started with his firm. The moment his legal battles hit the press, clients began pulling out. No one wanted to be associated with a disgraced attorney tangled in his own scandal. His partners, once loyal, turned their backs on him to protect their own careers. He had spent years climbing his way to the top, but now it was crumbling beneath him. Then came the financial hit. With his assets frozen due to the ongoing divorce, he couldn't pay the debts he had accumulated. His private accounts, ones he thought were well hidden, were exposed in court, proving he had stolen money not just from Mary Ann, but from clients, investments, even his own partners. By the end of the week, his law license was under review. By the end of the month, he was officially suspended. A once feared legal powerhouse, reduced to a man with no firm, no influence, and no one left to protect him. And I watched it happen without a single ounce of sympathy. Alyssa saw the news unfold from the safe house. I expected relief from her, maybe even satisfaction. Instead, she was silent. I found her sitting by the fireplace, staring at the flickering flames, her hands curled into fists against her lap. "It's done," I told her, standing a few feet away. "Your mother is safe. Your father's lost everything." She let out a breath, but it wasn't relief. It was something else. "You think this is enough?" she murmured. I frowned. "He's got nothing left. What more do you want?" She finally looked at me, her brown eyes darker than I remembered. "I want him to hurt." That was the moment I realized she wasn't the same girl I once knew. She had watched her father destroy lives for years, had watched him control her mother, humiliate me, and escape consequences over and over again. And now, she wasn't content with just taking away his power. She wanted him to feel it. "He's still walking free," she said softly, "still holding his head high, still pretending he's a victim. He's ruined too many lives to get away with this." I studied her for a long moment. There was something different in her voice. A quiet, restrained fury. She wasn't a bystander anymore. She was turning into something else. "What are you asking me to do, Alyssa?" She held my gaze, unflinching. "Make sure he never recovers." The next day, the final blow landed. I made one last phone call. Not to a lawyer. Not to a reporter. To the FBI. I had spent weeks gathering evidence of financial fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Gerald Whitmore thought he was untouchable. But even the most powerful men fall when the right authorities get involved. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. His mansion was raided. His files were seized. And the moment his arrest warrant was issued, the last remaining pieces of his empire collapsed. The media exploded. Gerald Whitmore indicted on multiple fraud charges. Once prominent attorney now facing up to 20 years in prison. And then came the images. A man once feared, once admired, now in handcuffs. I stared at the news coverage, barely blinking. I had spent a decade fighting my way out of the shadow this man cast over my life. And now, he was finally beneath me. Alyssa stood beside me, watching the TV screen. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, quietly, she whispered, "You really did it." I turned to her. "No, Alyssa, you did." She was the one who brought me back into this war. She was the one who wanted him to pay. And now, as she stared at the man who once ruled her life, there was no pity in her expression, only vindication. Gerald Whitmore was gone, and we had made sure he'd never rise again. With Gerald Whitmore gone, his empire crumbled, his name dragged through the mud, and his influence reduced to nothing. I should have felt satisfied. But satisfaction didn't come as quickly as I thought it would. The victory was absolute. There was no doubt about that. He wasn't getting out of this. The court had denied him bail, and every powerful connection he once had was scrambling to distance themselves. I had done what I promised. I had destroyed him. But that left one thing unresolved. Alyssa. In the weeks that followed, she didn't leave the safe house. She didn't bask in the triumph, didn't celebrate the way I expected her to. She was different now. Quieter. More distant. I found her outside one evening, standing by the railing of the terrace, staring at the fading sun. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "You should be happy," I said. She turned her head slightly but didn't look at me. "Should I?" I frowned. "You got what you wanted." "Did I?" She let out a breath. "He's in prison, yes? He'll never hurt my mother again." He'll never hurt anyone again. But it doesn't change what he did. It doesn't erase the damage. I knew what she meant. There was no undoing what Gerald had done to Marianne, to me, to Alyssa herself. Some scars didn't disappear, no matter how much time passed. He lost everything, I said after a moment. He's powerless now. She finally looked at me. And what about us? The question sat between us, heavy and unspoken for too long. What about us? For the past few months, we had been caught in this battle, tangled in a war against her father. But now that it was over, what were we? Were we two people who had unfinished business? Or were we two people who had changed too much to go back? I stepped closer, slowly. I don't know. Her fingers curled against the railing. Neither do I. The wind was soft against us, the night creeping in. We had spent so much time fighting. Fighting her father, fighting our past, fighting everything we thought we knew about each other. But now, for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to fight. Just the truth. I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We were never supposed to be over, were we? Her breath hitched, and for a second, she didn't say anything. Then, in the softest voice, she admitted, no, we weren't. And that was the moment I realized I had never stopped wanting her, not even for a second. The next few weeks passed in a strange blur of healing and rediscovery. I didn't expect us to fall back into old rhythms so easily. It wasn't like before. We weren't the same people, but there was something natural about being around each other again. At first, it was small things. She started coming to my office more often, sitting across from me while I worked, flipping through legal briefs like she was actually interested. I'd glance up and catch her smiling. Not the rehearsed, polite smile she gave to the world, but the real one. The one I remembered from years ago. Then came the late-night conversations. We talked about the past, about everything we had left unsaid. I should have fought for you, she admitted one night. That night, when my father threw you out, I should have stood up to him. I studied her carefully, my jaw tight. Why didn't you? She swallowed hard, looking down at her hands. Because I was afraid. She looked up then, her eyes filled with something raw. I was a coward, Callum. I let him decide my life for me, and I've regretted it ever since. For years, I had told myself I hated her for that moment, that I had buried my feelings in ambition and let them rot there. But hearing her say it now, seeing the way it still haunted her, I realized something. I didn't hate her. I had never hated her. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. It's over now. Her fingers curled around mine. Is it? I didn't know what she meant at first, but then I saw the way she was looking at me, like she wanted more, like she was waiting for me to give her permission to have it. I leaned in slightly. We don't have to run from this anymore. She let out a shaky breath, nodding. Then let's stop running. And just like that, everything we had lost found its way back to us. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. We were different now, and we had baggage. But one thing was clear. We weren't going to make the same mistakes again. We took our time. Dinners, late-night drives, stolen moments between cases. Slowly, we built something new. Not what we had before, but something stronger. Something that Gerald Whitmore could never touch. And for the first time in my life, I knew. This was how it was always meant to be. A year later, I stood in the middle of a home that I built without anyone's permission but my own. The walls held no memories of rejection, no echoes of the past, no ghosts of humiliation. It wasn't the Whitmore estate, where I had once sat in an overpriced chair while a man poured lukewarm tea on my dignity. It wasn't the cramped apartment where I had spent years studying by the dim glow of a desk lamp, fighting to become someone worthy. This was different. This was ours. Alyssa stood in the kitchen, barefoot, stirring something in a pot while music played softly in the background. The sight of her in my space, our space, without hesitation, without fear, without pretense felt surreal. She turned, smiling when she caught me watching her. You're staring. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Can you blame me? She rolled her eyes but didn't hide the blush creeping up her neck. It was moments like this that reminded me just how much had changed. A year ago, we had been nothing but unfinished business. A decade-old story left open-ended, full of resentment, regrets, and things left unsaid. But now, we were writing a new story, one with no shadows from the past hanging over us. And tonight, I was about to start a new chapter. I had been carrying the ring around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't about nerves. I already knew she would say yes. We had spent the last year learning each other all over again. This time, without her father's hand controlling the narrative. There was no hesitation in her love now. No fear in the way she touched me, kissed me, stood by me. This time, she was choosing me, and that made all the difference. After dinner, we sat outside on the balcony, the city stretching out before us in a sea of golden lights. She leaned into me, her head resting against my shoulder, and for a moment, everything felt perfectly still. I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing against the velvet box. Now, I turned slightly, tilting her chin up so she could look at me. Do you remember the first time I tried to do this? She stiffened, but then let out a breath, nodding. Of course I do. I pulled the ring out, flipping open the box. The diamond caught the light, sparkling between us. Her eyes widened, and for a second, I saw a flicker of the girl she used to be, the one who had once been too afraid to fight for what she wanted. But she wasn't that girl anymore. She was the woman who had walked away from her father's control, who had chosen her own path, who had stood beside me even when the world told her not to. Marry me, I said. Not because we have to prove anything to anyone, not because of the past, but because we fought like hell to get here, and I can't imagine spending another second of my life without you. Her breath hitched, her hand covering her mouth, but there was no hesitation this time. She reached for the ring with shaking fingers, her eyes glassy. Yes. And just like that, we rewrote the ending of our story. This time, there were no interruptions, no father's disapproval, no shame, no rejection, just us, just forever. The wedding came 6 months later. It wasn't a grand spectacle, not the kind her family would have planned before. No luxury hotel, no sea of high society guests. It was intimate, quiet, real. The people who mattered were there. My mentor, Lucas Rivers, stood beside me as my best man. Alyssa's mother, Mary Ann, smiled brighter than I had ever seen. There were no reporters, no flashing cameras, no whispers of scandal. Just a woman in a white dress, walking toward me with love in her eyes. And for the first time in my life, I knew I was enough. During the reception, Lucas raised a glass, his voice carrying over the clinking of silverware and soft laughter. I've watched this man fight for everything in his life. I've seen him claw his way up from nothing, turn every no into a watch me, and stand tall even when the world tried to break him. He paused, looking between us. But I've never seen him fight for something as fiercely as he fought for you, Alyssa. I swallowed, my grip tightening on her hand beneath the table. Here's to a love that survived against all odds, Lucas said, lifting his glass. And to a man who proved that destiny doesn't choose us, we choose it. The room filled with applause, but all I could focus on was her, my wife. The woman who had once been the greatest heartbreak of my life. Now, she was my greatest love. And this time, I was never letting go. The wedding was over. The guests had gone home. The echoes of laughter and clinking glasses had faded into the silence of the night. But as I sat in our bedroom, watching Alyssa remove the last of her jewelry, I knew this was only the beginning. She turned to me, her white dress pooling around her feet as she stepped closer, her eyes soft yet filled with something unspoken. We did it. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Yeah, we did. For years, it had felt impossible. Us. The idea that we could ever find our way back to each other, let alone stand together as husband and wife. There had been too many obstacles, too much history, too many wounds carved deep by the past. But we had survived. I reached for her, fingers tracing the bare skin of her arms. No regrets? She shook her head, stepping closer. Not a single one. The past no longer had a hold on us. The scars it left behind would always be there, but they no longer defined us. We had rewritten our own story, and this time, there was no tragedy waiting at the end. Only us. The honeymoon was simple, Nothing extravagant. Nothing designed to impress anyone but ourselves. We spent 2 weeks in a private villa overlooking the ocean, away from the world, away from anything that reminded us of the chaos we had endured. We slept in late, drank coffee on the balcony, walked barefoot along the shore. We talked about everything, the past, the future, the kind of life we wanted to build. For the first time, there were no lawyers, no reporters, no enemies waiting in the shadows. Just peace. One evening, we sat on the sand, watching the waves roll in, our fingers laced together. Alyssa glanced at me, her head tilted slightly. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we never found our way back? I exhaled, watching the sky darken into twilight. Sometimes, and I did, I wondered what my life would have been if I had never walked into that courtroom a year ago and seen her father standing on the other side. If she had never come to my office, folder in hand, asking for my help, would I still be the same man? Would she still be the same woman? Or had we needed that collision, that moment where everything shattered, just so we could rebuild something stronger? I turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But I don't regret how it happened, because it brought us here. She smiled, leaning into me. Yeah, it did. Returning home was surreal. The house felt different now. Not just a place I had built, but a place where we belonged together. Alyssa moved in immediately after the wedding, but it wasn't until we unpacked our honeymoon bags that it truly felt real. We settled into a rhythm quickly. She joined me in the kitchen every morning, still groggy from sleep, stealing sips from my coffee even though she had her own. I came home every night to find her curled up in the living room, flipping through case files like she was actually part of the firm. And in a way, she was. She wasn't just Alyssa Whitmore, the heiress who defied her father's legacy. She was Alyssa Hayes, my wife. The name suited her. One evening, Mary Ann came over for dinner. It had been months since we last saw her, and though she was free from Gerald's shadow, there was still a weight she carried, a kind of exhaustion that never quite left her eyes. But she smiled more now, laughed more, lived more. As we sat around the dining table, she reached across and squeezed Alyssa's hand. "You look happy," she murmured. Alyssa glanced at me before smiling. "I am." Mary Ann turned to me, her expression soft. "Thank you. For everything." I shook my head. "You don't have to thank me." She studied me for a moment before saying, "Yes, I do." Because she knew. She knew that I hadn't just saved her from Gerald. I had saved Alyssa, too. Or maybe we had saved each other. Months passed, then a year. The life we built wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt, still echoes of the past that tried to creep in. But we faced them together. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was proving anything to anyone. I was just living. One night, as we lay in bed, Alyssa traced lazy circles on my chest, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I tell you something?" I ran a hand through her hair, nodding. "Always." She hesitated, biting her lip before looking up at me. "I'm pregnant." The world tilted beneath me. I blinked, my brain trying to catch up to the words she had just said. Pregnant. We were going to have a baby. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. "You're sure?" She nodded, a small, nervous laugh escaping her. "I took the test this morning. I was going to wait until I was sure how to tell you, but I couldn't keep it in." For a long moment, I just stared at her, at my wife, at the woman who had once been nothing more than a memory of what could have been. And now, she was my future. I reached for her, pulling her into my arms, pressing my forehead against hers. "You have no idea how happy you just made me." She let out a breathless laugh, her fingers gripping my shirt. "Really?" I pulled back just enough to kiss her, slow and deep, pouring everything I felt into that moment. When I finally spoke, my voice was hoarse. "You're going to be an incredible mother, Alyssa." And just like that, our story began again. Not as a love that was almost lost, not as a battle fought against the odds, but as a family. And this time, nothing could take that away from us. You know, I never thought my life would turn into a cautionary tale. Looking back, it feels like all the signs were there, flashing like neon lights, but I chose to ignore them. Why? Because I was in love. Or at least, I thought I was. They say love makes you blind, but what they don't tell you is that it also makes you deaf, dumb, and sometimes even stupid. When I first met her, my wife, I thought I had hit the jackpot. She was charming, with a smile that could light up a room and a wit sharp enough to keep me on my toes. She had this way of making me feel like the center of her world, and I fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. I should have known better. Love doesn't pay the bills or stop people from being selfish. But, at the time, none of that mattered. I wanted to be her hero, her provider, her everything. Her family? That's another story. From day one, they were, let's say, a handful. Her parents were the kind of people who could talk circles around anyone, always convincing others to see things their way. Her dad, Jack, was a retired salesman who could probably sell sand in the desert. And her mom, Mary, had this uncanny ability to play the victim, complete with quivering lips and well-timed tears. Together, they were a team I never realized was playing me. It all started with the house. Their house, to be precise. They lived in this old, creaky place that should have been condemned years ago. The plumbing was shot, the roof leaked, and don't even get me started on the wiring. It was a fire hazard waiting to happen. But Mary had this way of making it sound like a sacred family heirloom. "We've lived here for decades," she'd say, her voice trembling just enough to tug at your heartstrings. "We raised our children here. It's more than just a house, it's our home." Cue the guilt trip. Every time we visited, I'd hear the same speech. And every time, I'd brush it off. "It's not my problem," I'd tell myself. But then came the kicker. They were behind on their mortgage, to the tune of $200,000. I remember the day they told me, sitting in their living room, sipping their lukewarm coffee while Mary dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Jack sighed heavily, like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. "We're going to lose the house," he said, his voice cracking for dramatic effect. Unless we can find some help." I should have walked out right then and there. But no, I stayed. I stayed because my wife, my dear, sweet wife, looked at me with those big, pleading eyes. "We can't let them lose the house," she whispered, her voice soft and full of urgency. "It's their home, their legacy." Legacy? What legacy? It was an overpriced money pit. But I didn't say that. Instead, I did what I always did. I caved. "Let me see what I can do," I heard myself say, even as a knot formed in my stomach. Let me tell you, coming up with $200,000 isn't easy. I had to cash out investments, take out a loan, and dip into my savings. Savings I had planned to use for our future, not to bail out her parents. But I convinced myself it was the right thing to do. After all, they were family now, right? And family helps each other. That's what I told myself as I handed over the check, watching as Mary cried tears of joy and Jack slapped me on the back like I just won the Super Bowl. "You're a good man," Jack said, his voice filled with gratitude. "We'll never forget this." Yeah, right. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that I walked away feeling like a hero. But the truth is, a part of me knew I'd made a mistake. Deep down, I could feel it, the nagging doubt, the voice in the back of my head telling me I'd been played. But I ignored it. I ignored it because I wanted to believe that I was doing something noble, that my sacrifice would mean something. Looking back, I realize now that it wasn't just the money I gave them. It was my trust, my faith, my belief in their sincerity. And what did I get in return? A knife in the back. But I'm getting ahead of myself. At that moment, I thought I was the good guy, the savior swooping in to rescue the damsel and her family. Little did I know, the real story was just beginning. And it was a story that would test everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and trust. I'll never forget the night it all came crashing down. You know those moments in life when the air feels thick, and you can sense something's about to go wrong? That was me, sitting at the dinner table with my wife and her parents. It was supposed to be a regular evening, a celebration of sorts after everything I'd done to save their house. I thought we'd moved past the drama, that life was finally settling into something close to normal. But no, life had other plans. We were halfway through Mary's famous meatloaf, if you could call it that, when my wife cleared her throat. That sound, that tiny, unassuming sound. I didn't know it then, but it was the drum roll before the fireworks, the prelude to the disaster that would unravel everything. "I have something to say," she announced, placing her fork down with deliberate precision. Her tone was calm, but her eyes, those eyes I'd fallen for, held something else. Guilt? Maybe. Or was it just a flicker of nervous excitement? I couldn't tell. "Go on," I said, trying to keep my voice light. But my stomach was already doing somersaults. She looked at me for a long moment, then at her parents. Jack nodded slightly, as if giving her permission to speak. That should have been my first clue. They all knew. They were in on it. "I've been seeing someone else," she said, her words slicing through the air like a blade. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Surely, she didn't just say what I thought she said. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She didn't flinch. "I'm in love with someone else," she repeated, her tone firmer this time. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she dropped the bombshell. "You need to pack your things and leave. I've got someone else now, someone better." The room went silent. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, but the kind that feels heavy, suffocating, like the world is holding its breath. I looked at her parents, expecting shock or outrage, maybe even a hint of sympathy. But no, they just sat there, smiling. Mary even had the audacity to give a little nod, like she approved of what her daughter had just said. "Someone better?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, this was my reward? This was how they repaid me? "Yes," she said simply, her voice devoid of any emotion. "It's time for us to move on." I glanced at Jack and Mary, hoping, praying, that one of them would step in, say something, anything to stop this madness. Instead, Jack leaned back in his chair, a smug look on his face. "It's for the best," he said casually, like we were discussing the weather and not the destruction of my marriage. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just her decision. This was a family effort. They had planned this, orchestrated it, played me like a fiddle. And now, here they were, sitting in my house. Yes, my house, the one I saved with my hard-earned money, telling me to leave. For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But then something inside me snapped. The absurdity of it all, the betrayal, the smug smiles, the complete lack of remorse. It was too much. And so, I laughed. I laughed harder than I'd laughed in years. "What's so funny?" my wife demanded, her voice tinged with annoyance. I wiped a tear from my eye, still chuckling. "You," I said, gesturing at the three of them. "All of you. You think you've won. You think you've pulled off the ultimate con. But you forgot something." Their smiles faltered. "What are you talking about?" Jack asked, his voice losing its earlier confidence. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "The house," I said simply. "You remember that little $200,000 debt I cleared for you? The one that saved this precious home of yours? Well, funny thing about that, I had it all documented. Legally. This house isn't yours anymore. It's mine." The color drained from Mary's face. Jack's jaw tightened, and my wife, my sweet, treacherous wife, just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You're lying," she finally managed to say, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" I shot back, pulling out my phone. "Because I have the receipts, the contracts, everything. You thought you could play me, but guess what? I played you." The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time that night, I felt like I was in control. And let me tell you, it felt damn good. You know what's funny? People always assume betrayal will break you, that it'll leave you on your knees, begging for explanations or second chances. But when it's so blatant, so audacious, it doesn't hurt. Not immediately, at least. No, the first thing you feel is disbelief, followed by a rush of anger so sharp it almost feels like clarity. And that's exactly what happened to me. There I was, sitting at the head of the table in my own house, staring at these three people who had just tried to turn my life upside down. My wife, the woman I once thought was my soulmate, had just declared she was leaving me for someone better. Her parents, grinning like hyenas, had the audacity to co-sign her betrayal, treating it like some great family achievement. And me? I was supposed to pack my bags and leave quietly, tail between my legs. It was laughable, really. But let me tell you something about laughter. It's the best weapon in moments like these. So I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that comes from joy or humor, but the kind that bubbles up from the sheer absurdity of the situation. It was a deep, belly-aching laugh that left them blinking in confusion. "What's so funny?" my wife asked, her tone sharp, like she couldn't fathom why I wasn't already groveling or crying. I leaned back in my chair, tapping my fingers on the table as I looked each of them in the eye. "You think you've won, don't you?" I said, my voice calm but laced with steel. "You think you've pulled the rug out from under me, that I'll just walk away quietly while you and your new boyfriend live happily ever after in my house?" Her parents exchanged nervous glances, their earlier smugness starting to crack. "Now, hold on," Jack began, but I cut him off with a wave of my hand. "Save it," I snapped, my voice cold enough to freeze the room. "You had your turn to talk. Now it's mine." I stood up, slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch until it felt suffocating. "You forgot something," I continued, my gaze locking onto my wife's. "Something important." She swallowed hard, her earlier bravado fading. "And what's that?" "The house," I said, savoring the way the color drained from her face. "You see, when I cleared that $200,000 mortgage for your parents, I didn't do it blindly. I'm not an idiot. I had everything documented, signed, sealed, and notarized. As of this moment, this house doesn't belong to you. Or them. It belongs to me." Mary's fork clattered to her plate, her hand flying to her chest like she'd just been shot. "That's not possible," she cried, her voice trembling. "Oh, it's possible," I shot back, pulling out my phone. "I have the contracts right here, if you'd like to take a look. Or better yet, we can call my lawyer. He'd be happy to explain it to you." The room fell into stunned silence. Jack, who always had something to say, looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Mary's tears, usually her go-to weapon, hadn't even started yet, as if her brain couldn't process what was happening fast enough. And my wife? She just sat there, staring at me like she was seeing a ghost. You can't do this," she finally stammered. "This is our home." "No," I corrected her, my voice calm but firm. "This is my home. You and your parents made sure of that when you signed over the deed in exchange for the money I gave you. So, if anyone's packing their things, it's you." The power shift in that moment was palpable. For months, they had treated me like a doormat, using my generosity and love as weapons against me. But now, the tables had turned, and I wasn't about to let them forget it. Jack finally found his voice, though it was weaker than I'd ever heard it. "We can work something out," he said, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Let's be reasonable about this." "Reasonable?" I repeated, letting out another humorless laugh. "You want to talk about reason after everything you've done? After you sat there, smiling, while your daughter told me to leave my own house? No, Jack. The time for reason is over." Mary started crying then, big, dramatic sobs that once might have made me feel guilty. But now, they only made me angrier. "Oh, save it, Mary," I snapped. "Your tears won't change anything. You knew what you were doing from the start. You played your part beautifully, didn't you? Convincing me to save this house while you plotted to kick me out of it. Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "We'll make it up to you. Just don't take the house." I shook my head, the weight of their betrayal settling over me like a heavy cloak. "This isn't about the house anymore," I said, my voice low and steady. "This is about respect, something none of you seem to understand." I turned to my wife, the woman I had once loved so deeply it hurt. "You wanted me to pack my things and leave?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Fine, I'll leave, but not before you do." Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "Oh, I do," I replied, my tone deadly serious. "You, your parents, and all your things out. Tonight. This is my house now, and I don't want you in it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sense of control, of power. They had underestimated me, assumed I was weak, naive. But they were wrong. I wasn't just their victim. I was their reckoning. If there's one thing betrayal teaches you, it's how quickly the balance of power can shift. One minute, they thought they had me cornered, a pawn in their grand scheme. The next, I was holding all the cards, and they didn't even realize it until it was too late. Watching the smugness drain from their faces was like watching a dam break. Slow at first, then unstoppable. They sat there in stunned silence, my wife, her parents, their entire facade crumbling. Mary's earlier sobbing turned into a strange hiccup, her face frozen somewhere between disbelief and panic. Jack's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out, unusual for a man who always had something to say. My wife, though, was the most satisfying to watch. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by wide eyes and trembling lips. "You're lying," she finally said, though her voice lacked any real conviction. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms as I met her gaze. "Am I?" I asked, letting the question hang in the air. Then, with deliberate calm, I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen a few times. "Do you want to see the contracts? The ones you and your parents signed when I paid off the mortgage? Because I've got them right here." I slid my phone across the table, the documents open and glowing on the screen. None of them reached for it. Mary's eyes darted between the phone and me, her hands wringing together like she was trying to squeeze the truth out of the air. Jack finally mustered the courage to pick up the phone, his fingers trembling as he scrolled through the document. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint rustle of the paper on the screen as he scrolled. This can't be right," he muttered, though his voice was more a whisper than anything else. "It's right," I said firmly. "Every signature, every clause, it's all there. You didn't think I'd hand over $200,000 without covering my own back, did you? I may have been generous, but I'm not stupid." Jack's face turned ashen as he slid the phone back across the table. Mary looked at him, her voice trembling as she asked, "Is it true?" He nodded, his shoulders slumping. "It's true." Her sobs started again, louder this time, but they didn't move me. I had seen those tears too many times to believe they were genuine. My wife, however, was still trying to find a way out. "There has to be something we can do," she said, her voice shaking. "You can't just throw us out." I raised an eyebrow. "Can't I? You were ready to throw me out not 10 minutes ago, remember? Telling me to pack my things and leave my own house? The difference is, I'm not playing games. I have every legal right to kick you out, and trust me, I will." "But this is our home," Mary wailed, clutching Jack's arm as if that would somehow change the situation. "No," I said, my voice sharp and cutting. "This stopped being your home the moment you signed it over to me. And don't pretend you didn't know what you were doing. You were more than happy to take my money and smile in my face while planning to stab me in the back." Jack, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. "We can work something out," he said, his tone cautious. "We're family, after all." "Family?" I repeated, letting out a bitter laugh. "You've got some nerve, Jack. Family doesn't lie, cheat, and scheme. Family doesn't treat one of their own like a disposable ATM. You lost the right to call me family the moment you decided to side with her against me." He had no response to that, and honestly, I didn't expect one. People like Jack and Mary were great at spinning tales and playing the victim, but when faced with the cold, hard truth, they had nothing. I turned to my wife, who was now staring at her plate as if it held the answers to all her problems. "You wanted me gone so you could play house with your new boyfriend," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Well, congratulations, you're free to do that. But it won't be here. Pack your things and go. All of you." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. "You can't mean that," she said, her voice trembling. "Where will we go?" "That's not my problem," I replied, standing up and pushing my chair back. "You made your bed, now lie in it. You wanted to move on? Consider this your chance." For a moment, I thought she might try to argue, but then she seemed to realize there was no point. I had the upper hand, and there was no talking her way out of this one. Mary and Jack started whispering to each other, their faces pale and drawn. I didn't care what they were saying. All I cared about was getting them out of my house. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, I said, my voice firm. You've got until the end of the day to pack your things and leave. If you're still here tomorrow, I'll have the locks changed and the police on standby. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace, a clarity that had been missing for months. They thought they could take advantage of me, that I'd roll over and let them win. But they were wrong. This was my house, my life, and I wasn't about to let anyone take it from me. You'd think, after being caught red-handed in their betrayal, they'd have the decency to leave with what little dignity they had left. But no, Jack and Mary weren't the type to bow out gracefully. The moment they realized I was serious, dead serious, the groveling began. Mary was the first to break. She stood from her chair, her hands clasped together like she was praying. "Please, don't do this," she begged, her voice trembling with that fake sincerity I had fallen for in the past. "We're sorry. We didn't mean for things to go this far." I looked at her, unimpressed. "Didn't mean for things to go this far? Really? You were just sitting there, smiling while your daughter told me to pack my things and get out of my own house. That doesn't exactly scream, we didn't mean it." She flinched at my words, her lower lip quivering as tears began to roll down her cheeks. "We were just trying to protect our family," she said, her voice breaking. "This house means so much to us. It's all we have." I folded my arms, leaning against the wall as I watched her crumble. "Funny," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I seem to recall saying the same thing about the money I gave you to save this house. But I guess that didn't matter to you, did it? As long as you got what you wanted, I was just a means to an end." Jack, who had been sitting in silence, finally spoke up. "Look, son," he started, his tone calm, like he thought he could reason with me. "I know this looks bad, but we're family. Families fight. Families make mistakes. But at the end of the day, we stick together." I let out a humorless laugh. "Family? You've got some nerve, Jack. You and Mary schemed with your daughter to kick me out of a house I paid for. You tried to destroy me, and now you're sitting here, asking me to stick together as if nothing happened? Give me a break." He stood then, walking around the table to stand in front of me. His hands were up in a gesture of peace, but I could see the desperation in his eyes. "We made a mistake, okay? But throwing us out isn't the answer. We can fix this. Let's sit down and figure out a way forward." I raised an eyebrow, my gaze unwavering. "The way forward is simple. You pack your things and leave. That's the only way this ends." Mary started sobbing again, clutching at Jack's arm as if that would somehow make me change my mind. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "We don't have anywhere else to go." "And whose fault is that?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "You had a roof over your head because of me. I saved this house when you were on the verge of losing it. But instead of being grateful, you tried to take it from me. So no, Mary, I'm not going to feel sorry for you." My wife, who had been unusually quiet during all of this, finally spoke up. "You're being cruel," she said, her voice low but steady. "We made mistakes, yes, but you're overreacting. This isn't just about you. There's a bigger picture here." I turned to her, my anger bubbling to the surface. "The bigger picture?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You mean the one where you get to live happily ever after with your new boyfriend while I'm left to pick up the pieces? Yeah, I'm not interested in that picture." She crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. "This isn't fair." I took a step closer to her, my gaze never leaving hers. "Fair?" I said, my voice cold. "You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about how I gave up my savings, my security, my future to save this house. Let's talk about how I trusted you, only to find out you were planning to replace me the whole time. So don't stand there and lecture me about fairness." Jack stepped in then, his voice desperate. "Please, let's just calm down. We can figure this out. We'll pay you back, every cent." I turned to him, shaking my head. "No, you won't. You don't have the money, Jack. And even if you did, it wouldn't change anything. This isn't just about the money. This is about respect, Something you clearly don't have for me." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, none of them spoke, the weight of their actions finally sinking in. Mary's sobs turned into quiet sniffles, and Jack looked like he'd aged 10 years in the span of a few minutes. My wife, however, still had a defiant look in her eyes, as if she thought she could salvage this somehow. But she couldn't. None of them could. They had crossed a line, and there was no going back. "You have until the end of the day," I said, my voice firm. "Pack your things and leave. If you're still here tomorrow, I'll have the locks changed and call the police." Mary started to say something, but Jack stopped her, placing a hand on her shoulder and shaking his head. He knew it was over. They had played their cards and lost. As they began to gather their things, I stood there, watching. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. This was my house now, truly mine, and no amount of pleading or tears would change that. You'd think kicking people out of your house, especially people you once considered family, would be satisfying. And don't get me wrong, it was. But it was also exhausting, like cleaning up after a party you never wanted to attend. Still, there was no other way. They had pushed me into this corner, and now they had to live with the consequences. The morning after I told them to leave, I woke up to the sound of boxes being shuffled around and hushed voices arguing in the living room. Good. At least they were taking me seriously. I threw on a t-shirt and jeans, grabbed a cup of coffee, and made my way downstairs. When I reached the bottom step, I leaned against the banister and watched the chaos unfold. Mary was frantically stuffing framed photos and knickknacks into a box, her hands trembling. Jack was crouched by the sofa, muttering under his breath as he tried to fit a pile of books into a bag that was clearly too small. And my wife, well, ex-wife-to-be, was standing by the door, directing the whole operation like a drill sergeant. "You need to be more careful with that," she snapped at Jack. "That's antique." I couldn't help but smirk. The irony of her treating her parents like they were the hired help wasn't lost on me. "Morning," I said, my voice breaking through their frantic chatter. All three of them froze, turning to look at me like deer caught in headlights. Mary tried to muster a smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Good morning," she said, her voice shaky. "We're just, finishing up." "Take your time," I replied, sipping my coffee. "But not too much time. I meant what I said. If you're still here by the end of the day, I'm calling the police." Jack straightened up, glaring at me. "You don't have to keep rubbing it in," he said, his voice low and bitter. "Rubbing it in?" I raised an eyebrow. "You're lucky I'm giving you the whole day. After what you pulled, I'd be well within my rights to toss you out right now." He opened his mouth to argue, but thought better of it, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Mary sniffled, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her sweater. "This is so hard for us," she said, her voice trembling. "We've lived here for so long. Don't," I cut her off, my tone sharper than I intended. "You don't get to play the victim here. Not after everything you've done." She flinched, her tears flowing more freely now, but I didn't care. I had spent too long bending over backward for these people, and I wasn't about to let their crocodile tears manipulate me again. My wife, however, wasn't giving up so easily. "You're being heartless," she said, her voice cold and accusing. "We made mistakes, but this is cruel." I set my coffee cup down on the counter, turning to face her fully. "Cruel?" I echoed, my voice calm but deadly serious. "You want to talk about cruel? Let's talk about how you smiled in my face while planning to replace me. Let's talk about how you and your parents treated me like an ATM, taking everything I gave without so much as a thank you. You don't get to lecture me about cruelty." She looked away, her jaw tightening as if she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Good. Let her sit with the weight of her actions. By midday, the pile of boxes near the door had grown, and the house was eerily quiet. They were avoiding me now, shuffling around like ghosts as they packed up the remnants of their lives. Occasionally, I'd catch Mary shooting me a pleading look, but I ignored her. I wasn't about to cave. Not this time. As the afternoon dragged on, a moving van pulled up in front of the house. The driver stepped out, looking confused as he surveyed the scene. Jack went outside to talk to him, and a few moments later, They started loading the boxes into the van. It was a slow process, and I could feel my patience wearing thin, but I kept my cool. This was their mess to clean up, not mine. By evening, the house was finally empty of their belongings. The living room, once cluttered with their furniture and decorations, now felt spacious and clean. It was strange, really, how the absence of their things seemed to lighten the entire atmosphere. As they carried the last box out to the van, I followed them to the front porch. Mary turned to me, her face streaked with tears. "We're sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." I didn't respond. What was there to say? Sorry didn't undo the betrayal, and it certainly didn't erase the pain they had caused. I simply nodded, my expression unreadable. Jack climbed into the van, slamming the door shut. My wife lingered for a moment, her eyes searching mine for some sign of forgiveness. She didn't find it. "Goodbye," she said softly, her voice tinged with regret. "Goodbye," I replied, my tone flat. I stood on the porch, watching as the van pulled away, taking them, and all their lies, out of my life. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The house, once a symbol of my misplaced trust and sacrifice, was now a reminder of my resilience. I had taken back what was mine, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me again. As the sun set and the quiet of the house wrapped around me, I realized something. I wasn't just free of them. I was free to start over. And that was a feeling worth holding on to. The silence in the house was deafening. Not the eerie, unsettling kind, but the kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket after a long, exhausting day. It was the first time in months, maybe years, that I felt truly alone, and instead of loneliness, I felt peace. No voices arguing in the next room. No passive-aggressive comments from Jack. No hovering Mary. Just quiet. I walked through the now empty house, every step echoing in a way that felt oddly satisfying. Each bare corner was a reminder of what I'd endured and what I'd overcome. The living room, stripped of their clutter, felt bigger, brighter. The kitchen, once a battleground of whispered insults and forced smiles, now seemed inviting. This was my house, truly mine, and it finally felt like home. But the peace didn't come without its challenges. In the days following their eviction, I found myself replaying everything in my mind. The betrayal, the lies, the audacity of their actions. It all felt like a bad dream I couldn't quite shake. There were moments when the anger bubbled up again, hot and relentless, and I had to remind myself that I had one. They were gone, and I had reclaimed what was mine. Still, the betrayal left scars. I had trusted these people, loved them, even considered them family. My wife, no, my ex-wife-to-be, had been my partner, my confidant. Or so I thought. How had I missed the signs? How had I been so blind to their manipulation? The questions haunted me, but I refused to let them define me. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. One of the first things I did was change the locks. It was symbolic as much as it was practical. Turning that key in the shiny new lock felt like closing the door on the past, literally and figuratively. Next, I went through the house, making it my own. I replaced the outdated furniture with sleek, modern pieces that reflected who I was, not who they wanted me to be. The walls that once held their family photos now displayed artwork I had chosen, pieces that brought me joy. Then there were the finances. Cleaning up the mess they'd left behind was no small task. Despite all the legal precautions I'd taken, untangling myself from their chaos took time and energy. But each bill I paid, each document I signed, felt like another step toward freedom. I was rebuilding, brick by brick, and it felt good. Friends and family began to notice the change in me. "You seem lighter," my sister said during one of our phone calls. "Happier." "I am," I admitted. And it was true. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's expectations or deceit. I was living for myself, and it felt incredible. Of course, word got around about what had happened. People love a good scandal, and my story was no exception. I heard the whispers, the speculation, the exaggerated tales of my so-called revenge. Some painted me as the villain, the heartless husband who threw his wife and her parents out on the street. Others saw me as a hero, a man who stood up for himself and took back what was rightfully his. I didn't care what they thought. The only opinion that mattered was mine. Then came the calls. First from Mary, then from Jack. Voicemail after voicemail, each one more desperate than the last. They begged for forgiveness, pleaded for a second chance, even offered to pay me back. Something we all knew they couldn't do. I ignored them. I didn't block their numbers right away, though. There was something satisfying about hearing their voices, knowing they were the ones groveling now. But eventually, I grew tired of their apologies and empty promises. I blocked their numbers, cut off all contact, and moved on. As for my ex-wife, she didn't call right away. It wasn't until weeks later that she showed up at my door, flowers in hand and regret written all over her face. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice trembling. "I was wrong and I see that now." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and looked her over. She was a shadow of the woman I once knew, no longer confident and self-assured, but broken and unsure. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, but I couldn't. Not after everything she'd done. "You're only here because your plan fell apart," I told her. "You thought you could replace me, but it turns out the grass isn't greener on the other side, is it?" She tried to argue, but I didn't let her. "We're done," I said firmly. "There's no coming back from this." Closing the door on her felt like closing the door on that chapter of my life. It was over, and I was free. In the weeks that followed, I found myself again. I threw myself into work, picked up hobbies I'd abandoned, and reconnected with old friends. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The house, once a symbol of betrayal, had become my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe, think, and grow. Every now and then, I'd hear updates about my ex-wife and her parents. They were struggling, living in a cramped apartment, and trying to piece their lives back together. I didn't take pleasure in their misery, but I didn't feel bad for them either. They had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. As for me, I was finally at peace. The betrayal had hurt, yes, but it had also taught me something invaluable, my worth. I had spent so much time giving, sacrificing, and bending over backward for people who didn't deserve it. Never again. From now on, I was putting myself first, and let me tell you, it felt damn good. I'll admit, I thought the story ended when I shut the door on them. But life has a funny way of testing you, of throwing one last curveball just to see if you've really learned your lesson. I wasn't surprised when my ex-wife showed up again. What surprised me was how little I cared. It was a quiet afternoon. I was sitting in the living room, finally enjoying the space I'd reclaimed. The air was fresh, the sunlight streaming through the windows, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the house felt like home. Then came the knock. I glanced toward the door, half expecting a delivery. Instead, through the peephole, I saw her, my ex-wife. She was holding a bouquet of flowers, the same forced smile on her face that she used to wear when trying to get her way. My first instinct was to ignore her, let her knock until she gave up. But then I thought, no, let's end this for good. Opening the door, I leaned against the frame and crossed my arms. "What do you want?" She shuffled her feet, her smile faltering. I just wanted to talk," she said, holding out the flowers like a peace offering. "I've realized I made a mistake." I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. "A mistake? That's what you're calling it now?" She flinched but pressed on. "I was wrong about everything. I see that now. I've been miserable without you, and I just want to fix things." The audacity of her words made me laugh again, this time with more amusement than anger. "You want to fix things?" I said, gesturing toward the empty street. "Where's your someone better? Shouldn't he be fixing things with you?" Her face crumpled, the cracks in her facade finally showing. "He's gone," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "He wasn't who I thought he was." "Shocker," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "And now, what? You think you can waltz back into my life, into my house, and we'll just pick up where we left off?" She started to speak, but I held up a hand to stop her. "No, you don't get to rewrite history. You made your choice, and now you get to live with it." Her tears came then, and I'll admit, There was a time when they would have broken me, made me question everything, but not anymore. I had learned my worth, and I wasn't about to let her or anyone else take that away. "You should go," I said, stepping back into the house. "And don't come back." I closed the door before she could respond, her muffled sobs fading as I walked away. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, nor was it anger. It was peace, a quiet, steady sense of closure that told me I'd done the right thing. In the weeks that followed, I heard bits and pieces about her and her parents through mutual acquaintances. Karma, it seemed, wasn't wasting any time. Her parents had been forced to move into a tiny, run-down apartment, far from the comfort they'd once enjoyed. Their finances were in shambles, their reputation tarnished. Mary, who once held her head high, was now a shadow of herself, and Jack had become bitter and withdrawn. As for my ex-wife, she wasn't faring much better. The man she left me for had drained her emotionally and financially before disappearing entirely. She was struggling to make ends meet, and the support she once had from her parents was now non-existent. They were too busy dealing with their own problems to help her. People asked me if I felt vindicated, if seeing their downfall gave me satisfaction, and maybe in a way it did, but mostly, it reminded me of why I'd made the choices I had. Their actions had consequences, and now they were living with them, just as I was living with mine. Only my life was moving forward, not backward. The house, once a battleground of betrayal, had become my sanctuary. I filled it with things that brought me joy: art, books, music. I hosted dinners with friends, laughed in the very rooms that had once felt suffocating. Slowly but surely, I rebuilt not just my home, but my life. One evening, as I stood in the backyard watching the sunset, I thought about everything I'd been through. The lies, the manipulation, the heartbreak. It had all shaped me, taught me lessons I wouldn't trade for anything. I had learned to stand up for myself, to value my worth, to let go of people who didn't deserve me. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free from their expectations, their demands, their betrayal. Free to live life on my terms. And let me tell you, there's nothing sweeter than that. This wasn't the ending I had planned for myself when I said, "I do." But in a way, it was better. Because it wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning. And this time, the story was mine to write.